Chapter 303. The atmosphere in the limousine became much more solemn. Behind the surface of Earth's calmness, there was such a dangerous situation. More importantly, no one knew when that day would come. If they were to tell the governments that dark forces would descend on Earth, it would be very difficult to convince them. Moreover, it would be very difficult for the governments to solve such a problem. On the bright and sunny Earth, there seemed to be an invisible pressure shrouding it. No one knew when that day would come. And the arrival of that day, for Earth, even if it wasn't the end of the world, it was close to it. Xiang Bing smiled and said, "All right, everyone, don't be so depressed. Qiyu finally came back. Think about it, we can even solve a problem like the asteroids. So what if the dark forces are strong? At worst, we can just fight guerrilla warfare and do our best to eliminate their effective forces. And the countries aren't fools. Earth's biggest advantage is the power of technology. Perhaps the countries will suffer at the beginning, but who can be sure that the countries on Earth can't think of a way to deal with those evil forces? At least for now, Earth is still peaceful. Everyone be happy. Don't forget, you are going to see your in-laws." Hearing Xiang Bing's words, the atmosphere in the limousine became more relaxed. Qiyu raised his head and said, "Indeed, I really need to relax. Let's hope this time can last a little longer. If my judgment is correct, even if hell attacked, it won't happen in a short time. Let me rest for a few days and recover my energy." Then, he gathered everyone together. "Then do your best to improve everyone's strength. Especially our Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. You must reach the 9th cloud level as soon as possible. When the time comes, if all 12 of you can reach the 9th cloud level, and with me, we can activate the Zodiac Guardian God domain together. Whether it's the great demon King Satan or Hades, it's not like we don't have a chance. If they dare to come, I will show them the power to destroy heaven and earth." As he spoke, Qiyu subconsciously touched the Kongtong seal on his chest. Before leaving the Dragonfield courtyard, Ryue had already given him the 2 halves of the Xianyuan sword. The Xianyuan sword had completely lost its spirituality, let alone the existence of Xuanyuan's soul. The black blade looked just like an ordinary iron sword. Qiyu secretly used Kirin's true fire to test it. The Xianyuan sword did not react at all, let alone recast it. The cave seal spirit had once said that if he wanted to reforge the Xianyuan sword, he would need heavenly fire to do so. The heavenly fire did not exist on Earth at all. If it was in the past, Qiyu might have given up. However, ever since he upgraded his thundercloud force to the 9th cloud level in Hell, his confidence was rekindled. He believed that since the Earth was facing such a huge crisis, then, he would definitely be able to restore the Xianyuan sword to its original glory. Ryue said, "Qiyu, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for everyone to reach the 9th cloud level. After all, although a few of us have already reached the 8th cloud level, people like Guanjing and Emodan are only at the 6th cloud level. It is impossible to reach the 3rd cloud level in a short time." Qiyu smiled. He said, "Do you still remember what I said before? In this world, nothing is impossible. It is very difficult for me to improve my strength now. When the time comes, I will do my best to use the natural source of energy to help you cultivate. One by one, I will help as many of you as you can reach the 9th cloud level. After all, once you reach the 9th cloud level, your strength will enter another realm." Not only could he use the 3rd stage of origin mutation to instantly double his strength, but he would also gain his own domain ability. When the time comes, each of you will be as strong as a Dreadlord, or even stronger. Kirin's support ability. This was Kirin's specialty among the Zodiac Guardian warriors. Since his own strength could only be improved through opportunities, then he would use the time he spent looking for opportunities to help others. With Qiyu's understanding of the natural source of energy, he believed that with his full support, each of the Zodiac Guardian warriors would improve qualitatively. The Cadillac drove smoothly on the main road. There was not much traffic at this time. As they chatted, they arrived in front of the Golden Grain Group. Chi-yu got out of the car first and opened the door for the ladies, allowing them to step out one by one. Although they were dressed very casually, the appearance of the 5 ladies immediately painted the plaza in front of the Golden Grain Group with a layer of brilliance. Even the flowers in the square that had just begun to bloom were overshadowed by it. Looking at the 5 ladies with different temperaments, Chi-yu exclaimed, "I think that's the best way to describe you guys." Ming Ming giggled. "How tacky. Can't you think of some other adjectives?" Chi-yu scratched his head helplessly. "You know, I'm almost illiterate. Unfortunately, I don't have the time now. Otherwise, I would really like to go back to a better school. That way, you guys won't abandon me." As he said that, he put on a pitiful expression. Unfortunately, the 5 ladies did not seem to see it and walked straight to the entrance of the Golden Grain Group. Chi-yu followed them into the Golden Grain Group. As he expected, the appearance of the 5 ladies instantly caused a commotion in the lobby of the Golden Grain Group. The crowd that had been shuttling back and forth stopped in the middle, and all eyes were focused on them. Ryua had seen this kind of scene many times. Naturally, she did not mind. Xiangbing never cared what others thought of her. Of course, Chi-yu was an exception. Snow Girl had been the general manager of Kirin Group for a long time. She was more or less able to handle such a scene. As for the Plant Soul and Ming Ming, they were a little shy. The Plant Soul lowered its head. Ming Ming, on the other hand, glared at the people who were looking at them, as if saying, "What are you looking at? Haven't you seen a beauty before?" Of course, if the Golden Grain Group employees who were looking at them could hear the voices of the beauties, they would definitely answer that they had seen the beauties before. But they had never seen so many beauties at the same time. The 5 ladies were not ordinary people. The temperament they exuded was naturally not something that ordinary people could compare with. This made their beauty more than just on the surface. The white-collar workers of the Golden Grain Group admired them even more. If it were not for them, there were too many of them. Perhaps someone had already come up to hit on them. To Chi-yu, the way others looked at him was something to be proud of. "These are all my confidants." Of course, he would not say it out loud. After all, he had just been punished by the family. He did not want to be the target of public criticism again. The fiery gazes gradually disappeared after they were isolated by the elevator door. For a moment, the hall of the Golden Grain Group's main building was filled with sighs. Everyone was trying to guess what those beauties were doing. "Xiao Wang, do you know which company those beauties are from? If they were a company's public relations department. When it comes to business, they are always successful." "Well, I don't know which company they are from. I think they are here to talk about business. From the looks of it, it should be a big business. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent so many beauties. Almost every single one of them could become a goddess in my heart. Especially the one walking at the front. I'm afraid even the British princess can't compare with her temperament." "Who said that?" "I just like the shy girl next to him. Her figure is so slim. That appearance and that gentle temperament are the most suitable for me." All right. You two don't have to be so lascivious." Another employee who seemed to be of a higher rank said, "Among those people just now, I can recognize a few of them. Didn't you see that among the 6 of them, only one is a man? That silver-haired man. He is our company's deputy general manager, Chi-yu, who has only been here a few times since he took office. I heard that he is the CEO's long-lost son. If it wasn't him, who could walk with so many beauties? But I know which one of those girls is his girlfriend." "Tell me, which one is it?" "It's the one wearing a white dress that seems to be covered with a layer of frost. Didn't you see how gentle her eyes were when she looked at CEO Chi? It was like the thawing of ice and snow. She is the most famous senior manager recently. She is the general manager of the Kirin Group, who started by selling high-priced fruit. It is said that our CEO Chi is the boss behind the scenes of Kirin Group. It is because of this reason that he doesn't come to our company to work. As for the other beauties, I only know one of them. She is walking at the front, next to CEO Chi. She is the general manager of the Longyu Group, a famous strong woman. In her hands, the assets of the Longyu Group have increased several times. However, whether it is the Longyu Group or the Kirin Group, they are still much worse than our group. If these employees who were discussing knew that the 5 stunning beauties were actually Chi Yu's confidants, what would they think? Of course, it was impossible for Chi Yu to hear these people's discussion. Even if he heard it, he would just laugh it off. Soon, the elevator arrived at the top floor of the Golden Grain building. When the door opened, Chi Yu and the other 5 people walked out. Chi Tianlei's secretary was already waiting there. He respectfully saluted to Chi Yu and said, "CEO Chi, you're here. The chairman asked you to go to his office." Chi Yu nodded and returned the salute. He said, "Thank you." At this moment, Chi Yu saw a familiar figure. It was Secretary Huang, who was assigned to him by Chi Tianlei, Huang Wei. Huang Wei looked at Chi Yu with a complicated gaze, especially when she saw the 5 absolute beauties by Chi Yu's side. She was completely dumbfounded. She stood in the hallway, looking at each outstanding beauty. The feeling of inferiority made her unable to even lift her head. Once upon a time, she just regarded Chi Yu as a playboy who didn't know anything. However, it was at that time that Chi Yu saved her life. He used his own body to block the explosive force of the rocket. From that time on, Huang Wei's feelings for Chi Yu had completely changed. Especially when she knew that Chi Yu turned out to be the behind-the-scenes boss of the Kirin Group, this strange feeling filled her heart. She even waited for Chi Yu to come to work every day. However, from that time on, Chi Yu never appeared again. It was as if he had evaporated from the face of the earth. Huang Wei even shamelessly asked Chi Tianlei when Chi Yu would come to work a few times, but Chi Tianlei's answer was also very helpless. He only said 3 words, "I don't know." At this moment, this man finally came again. He seemed to have gone through a lot, but his calm and deep gaze was also more determined than before. To her, this man, who was like a mystery, had already deeply attracted her heart. As the modern inheritor of the Kirin bloodline, although Chi Yu wasn't very handsome, he was like a huge magnet. Any woman who paid attention to him for a long time would be attracted to him. Even powerful beauties like Ryue and Ming Ming couldn't escape, let alone this rich heiress. Chi Yu was the first to greet her. "Hello, Secretary Huang." "Ah." Huang Wei woke up from his complicated feelings and said subconsciously, "Chairman Chi, you still come to work. I thought you were too busy with the Kirin Group and wouldn't come anymore." After saying this, even Huang Wei was surprised by the resentment in his voice. It sounded like a resentful wife. As soon as Huang Wei said this, Chi Yu suffered. Almost at the same time, 5 small hands appeared on his back and pinched the soft flesh in different places. Chi Yu's expression instantly became strange. No matter how strong he was, he wouldn't dare to use it to defend against his wife's attacks. Moreover, the attack would only cause him pain. At that moment, the ruffian turned into a gentleman. Chi Yu looked straight ahead and said with a serious expression that he had never shown before, "Secretary Huang, this is indeed my fault. I will report this matter to the chairman." He tried to make his voice as calm and cold as possible, like a person in a superior position. Feeling the unprecedented high-level aura that Chi Yu exuded, Huang Wei couldn't help but feel even more intense in her heart. However, she did not know that behind Chi Yu, 5 small hands were secretly exerting force, pinching and twisting a certain someone's flesh. Walking past Huang Wei, Chi Yu's bitter voice reached the 5 women's ears. Can you be gentler? Gentler? Do you have a good memory? You only came to work once and you actually found such a beautiful female secretary. Bear with it. You'll get used to it after a bit, said Shangbing. She was the one who pinched Chi Yu's hand the most forcefully. Finally, Chi Yu walked into his father's office in torment. As soon as he entered the door, his back felt lighter. The 5 evil hands had finally disappeared. Chiyu let out a long breath. He felt a burning sensation on his back. It seemed that there were more bruises. He couldn't help but secretly decide that he definitely wouldn't use his energy transformation to dispel these bruises. He would show them at night and let them feel sorry for him. Next time, they wouldn't be so forceful. You're back. I missed you so much. Xiaodai rushed over almost as soon as she opened the door. Her footsteps were light and her movements were quick. She didn't look like a middle-aged woman at all. Although her face was full of joy and excitement, Chiyu could clearly see that his mother was much more radiant than the last time he saw her. The condition of her body and the energy she emitted were many times stronger than before. It seemed that his body transformation was completely successful. Feeling his mother's embrace, Chiyu's eyes suddenly became hot. His heart was filled with a warm feeling. Even the pain in his back seemed to have disappeared. Qi Tianlei stood in front of his desk and looked at Chiyu. Like Xiaodai, he had also become younger than before. The wrinkles on his face had obviously reduced a lot, and his wise eyes had also become brighter. There was only satisfaction in his eyes as he looked at his tall son. When they arrived, the 5 women, who were fierce before, suddenly turned into extremely gentle birds. At the same time, they saluted and said, "Hello, Uncle and Auntie." Qi Tianlei nodded and said with a smile, "Hello. Frankly, I'm a little envious of this kid, Chiyu." "Is that so?" Xiaodia's ears were very sharp. She turned around immediately and didn't wait for Chiyu to react. His mother took a step back to his father's side. He clearly saw that his mother's hand had reached his father's back, and his father's face became stiff in an instant. Is pinching also hereditary? Chiyu looked at Qi Tianlei and couldn't help but lower his head and snicker a few times, a little gloating. Qi Tianlei coughed and said, "Xiaodai, I was just saying casually. You know me about this." Xiaodai snorted and said, "Just saying casually proves that you have this idea. Forget it, I'll let you go this time. However, if there's a next time, don't blame me for being rude. I'll let you know what the 1,000-hand Guanyin Great Technique is." Qi Tianlei couldn't take it anymore and said, "Chiyu, look at your mother. You taught us the cultivation method, but she used it all on me. Do you have any golden bell cover and iron skin technique? Teach me quickly. I'll be able to deal with her in the future." Chiyu glanced at his wives with a wry smile and said, "Dad, even if you have this kind of technique, are you sure you dare to use it in front of Mom?" The father and son looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They couldn't help but show a trace of helplessness. Warmth filled the president's office amidst this helplessness. Perhaps no employee of the Golden Valley Group would have thought that the supreme leader of the group would have such a time. Ryue and the other women were obviously very interested in Xiaodia's 1,000-hand Guanyin Great Technique, and they all surrounded her obediently. Although they helped Qi Tianlei out of trouble, but Chiyu looked at his mother being coaxed by these girls to the point that she even forgot about him. He knew that his mother's unique skill would not be lost, and the result of not being lost was that his own flesh and blood would suffer. Qi Tianlei walked to Chiyu's side, looked at his son who seemed to have grown a little taller, and said, "Why did you go for so long this time? Don't you know how worried we were? Sigh, too many things have happened recently. Can you not participate in those dangerous operations in the future? Fortunately, it was successful this time. Otherwise, if you didn't come back, our family wouldn't even be able to die together." Chiyu was startled for a moment. "Dad, what are you talking about? I don't understand." Qi Tianlei said indifferently, "Others don't know about the asteroid hitting the Earth, but do you think I don't know? You're underestimating your father too much." Chiyu was shocked in his heart, and the gaze he looked at Qi Tianlei immediately became a lot more serious. "If my guess is correct, you must have participated in this operation. You were missing for so many days before, I really thought you were already in this operation. Speaking to hear, Chi Tianlei still had a lingering fear, revealing a bit of worry. I didn't even dare to tell your mother. Later you called back and I knew you were still alive. The reason why you came back so late was probably because you were injured in this operation. In order not to let us worry, you came back after your injury was healed. Looking at his father, the warmth in Chi Yu's heart became burning hot. Although Chi Tianlei tried to keep his tone as calm as possible, but Chi Yu saw that his hands were slightly trembling. He was worried about him, afraid that he would never come back. Dad, Chi Yu just wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Chi Tianlei. Chi Tianlei resolutely said, although I am also very patriotic, and I also know that what you did this time was right, for the entire human race. But at the same time I am also a father, your and Yingying's father. You are my only son, and I really don't want you to take any more risks. Chi Yu, your father no longer cares about money. What I care about now is for our family to be able to live together. Don't take any more risks, for the sake of me and your mother, can you promise me? Chi Yu looked at Chi Tianlei. He really wanted to open his mouth and agree to his father's request. From Chi Tianlei's gaze, he could see too many things. Furthermore, this was what he had always wanted the most. But could he really promise? Dad, I don't want to lie to you. I can't do it. Do you remember? I have told you that I am not appointed by anyone, and I don't need to accept anyone's orders. What I do is what I have to do, and only I can do it. Sometimes I really can't help myself. Since you know so many things, I can tell you frankly. In our world, there are many people like me. There are many, many people like me. They are all working hard for a common goal, which is to protect their homes. In the West, there are Western guardians. For example, the Vatican and the legendary successor of the Greek god. And in our East, there are also Eastern guardians. I'm one of them. Chi Tianlei's eyes flashed and he said, could it be? If you, one of the Eastern guardians, is missing, can't protect the East anymore? Chi Yu said with a wry smile. Although this is a little disrespectful to the other Eastern guardians, I still have to tell you. In a sense, I am indeed the most important one. Among the Eastern guardians, the most powerful and the main force is called the Zodiac Guardian. The 12 Zodiac Guardian gods each have the power of their own zodiac. They are powerful. They can be compared with the Western guardians, and the number of Zodiac Guardian gods is not as simple as 12. There should be 13. In addition to the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors, there is also Kirin. You must be very familiar with the historical myth of our Yanhuang Republic. In the legend, Kirin is the king of the beasts. And among the Zodiac Guardian warriors, Kirin is also the king of the Zodiac. Or, he is even the king of the Eastern Guardians. Among the Eastern Guardians, there can be no one, but it can't be without his king. At this point, Chi Yu paused, looked deeply into his father's eyes, and continued, and I am Kirin. Listening to Chi Yu's words, Chi Tianlei couldn't help but tremble. Kirin, my son is Kirin? Chi Yu sighed. In addition to your bloodline, I also inherited Kirin's bloodline, so I have the power of Kirin. As the king of the Zodiac, I can't retreat under any circumstances. When a crisis comes, I must rush to the front, otherwise, how can I lead my partners? Dad, I know I am not a qualified son. But in order for more sons to be reunited with their parents, and for you and Mom, I must constantly fight against those who want to invade our world, invade the East. I also hope that such days can end soon, but I really can't help it. I'm sorry, Dad, I know I let you down. Looking at Chi Yu, Chi Tianlei fell into a short daze. Chi Yu's body seemed to become taller in his eyes. Even the aura on his body seemed to have changed in some way. Of course, Chi Tianlei could imagine how heavy the burden on Chi Yu's shoulders was. The King of the Eastern Guardians, such a powerful title, but how much did his son pay for it? I understand. After a long time, Chi Tianlei said with some difficulty, go do what you should do. After all, we are just a small family. For the sake of our country's existence, for the sake of not being invaded, I support you, son. At the same time, I am also proud to have a son like you. Dad, Chi Yu's voice was a little choked. His father's understanding was more important than anything to him. Chi Tianlei patted Chi Yu's shoulder and said, "Rest assured, do what you have to do. Your mom has me here. But, can you tell me, how long do you have to live like this? Could it be that there is no end?" Chi Yu gently shook his head and said, "I don't know how long it will last. But, one thing is for sure, within a year, something major will happen. If we get through this, maybe in the future, in the days to come, we can live a peaceful life, and I can also stay with you and Mom." Chi Tianlei naturally understood the meaning behind Chi Yu's words. He nodded and said firmly, "I am waiting for that day to come. Son, I believe in you. No matter what difficulties, you will definitely be able to get through, right?" "Of course I can. Your excellent son can even pick up asteroid. What else can be difficult for him?" The office door suddenly opened. A group of people walked in from outside. Seeing this group of people appear, everyone in the room, including Chi Yu, was stunned. In fact, Chi Yu had already sensed that someone was approaching the office from outside, but because the other party's aura was not hostile, and they were just ordinary people, he only thought that it was the office staff of Golden Valley Group and did not pay too much attention. But now, it seemed that everything was not as simple as he had imagined. Appearing in front of Chi Tianlei and Chi Yu was a row of soldiers, a total of 8 people. Neatly dressed in military uniforms, they looked so majestic. Although the invisible pressure was not on the energy level, it was still enough to make people respect them. This was because the same number of stars hung on the shoulders of this group of people. "Dad, why are you here?" Ming Ming had already come to Chi Yu's side. That's right, on the shoulders of this group of 8 people, there were 3 stars. General, 8 generals. It should be noted that in the entire Yanhuang Republic, there were no more than 15 generals. At this moment, more than half of the people had appeared in the CEO's office of Golden Valley Group. With their military uniforms, it was no wonder that the staff of Golden Valley Group outside did not stop them. Who would dare to stop these generals who symbolized the absolute top military officials of the Yanhuang Republic? General Ji Zhongming stood at the front, looking at Chi Yu, his eyes filled with relief. Looking at Ji Zhongming, Chi Yu felt a little awkward. At this time, his 5 confidants were all present, and Ji Zhongming was considered one of his future fathers-in-law. Seeing that he was such a playboy, how would this general treat him? To Chi Yu's surprise, Ji Zhongming did not seem to see the other women. His gentle and comforting eyes looked at Chi Yu and smiled. "Because Chi Yu is back, so we came." Chi Yu was stunned. "Huh? I've only just returned. Uncle, you guys are way too well informed." Ji Zhongming said seriously, "Because of your importance to the country, I'm sorry, Dragonfield Courtyard has a special satellite monitoring you. So, when you came back, we were the first to know. But don't worry, since you are back, there is no need for satellite monitoring. We just want to know your whereabouts. I hope you can forgive us." Chi Yu looked at his father with a bitter smile. Chi Tianlei was also looking at him. He knew that his son was right. Other than him being the king of the Eastern Guardians, he could not think of any other explanation. Even if it was him, it was impossible for the country to use a single satellite to monitor him. It seemed that his son's status in the country had reached an unimaginable level. Chapter 304. Just as Chi Yu was about to say something, Ji Zhongming and the other 7 generals suddenly stood at attention in unison. Although the average age of these generals was over 60 years old, when they stood at attention at the same time, a murderous aura rushed toward them. His solemn expression startled everyone present. Ji Zhongming shouted in a deep voice, "Salute to the hero of our country." 8 hands, 8 generals' right hands, at the same time in the most standard posture, tilted next to their military cap. Silence. The entire room had fallen into complete silence. The 8 generals all had solemn expressions on their faces, and their eyes were filled with respect. Xiaodai covered her mouth in surprise. The 5 women brought by Qi Yu, including Ji Mingming, subconsciously widened their eyes. Qi Tianlei looked at the 8 generals, dumbfounded, and didn't know what to say. "Uncle, what are you doing?" Although Qi Yu was instantly shocked to the point that his blood was boiling, he was still the first to react as he had been through great storms. Ji Zhongming didn't put down his right hand and said in a deep voice, "On behalf of the country, we salute you. For the benefit of the country, you gave up your personal safety and saved the country from danger several times. This time, you even saved the whole world. The United States has officially notified our country after the asteroid deviated from its orbit. As a sign of respect for your actions, the United States said that from now on, the Yenhuang Republic will be their eternal ally. Qi Yu, our salute is what you deserve. Of course, this is far from being able to repay what you have done for the country. With the special approval of the President, from the moment you returned to the Yenhuang Republic, you have become the first foreign minister of the Yenhuang Republic. From now on, you will have the same treatment as the vice president in our country. No matter what level of military officers, they will automatically lower their status when they see you. Apart from not being able to command the army, you have now become the highest leader in the military, comparable to the chairman of the military commission." The chairman of the military commission? Qi Yu looked at Ji Zhongming with a bitter smile. He had never thought about these empty titles. "Uncle, this is completely unnecessary. Our country can't make such an exception. Actually, everything I've done is for my own sake. For my friends and family, I am not as great as you think." Mingming hurriedly said, "That's right. Dad, how can a father-in-law bow to his son-in-law? Hurry up and put your hands down." Ji Zhongming's eyes were filled with power as he glared at Mingming. With Mingming's powerful strength, Ji Zhongming's eyes were filled with power. Under his father's firm gaze, he was so frightened that he lowered his head. Ji Zhongming said in a deep voice, "We're not just bowing to Qi Yu alone. At the same time, we're also bowing to Qi Yu's father, Mr. Qi Tianlei, and Qi Yu's mother, Madame Xiaodai. It was them who had given birth to such an outstanding talent. I heard what Mr. Qi Tianlei said just now. Mr. Qi, on behalf of the military, I would like to extend my highest respect to you." At this time, Qi Tianlei had recovered from the shock just now. He only had one feeling now, and that was pride. He was proud of his own son. He stood beside Qi Yu. He returned the salute to the 8 generals and said, "Generals, you don't have to do this. Actually, although Xiaodai and I gave birth to Qi Yu, we never raised him for a single day. I heard from Qi Yu that he grew up in an orphanage. If not for the country, he wouldn't be where he is today. Although he did some things for the country. But this is what he should do. Besides, I believe that Qi Yu doesn't want too many restrictions and privileges. He is only a citizen of the country. Protecting the country is what any citizen should do." A tall and slightly plump general next to Ji Zhongming laughed and said, "Old Ji, you really kept it a secret? So this young man is your daughter's boyfriend. Sigh, why don't I have a beautiful daughter? I'm basking in the glory of having such a son-in-law." Ji Zhongming glared at him. "That's your own problem." At this time, his face revealed a hint of pride. As he spoke, the 8 generals finally put down their saluting hands. Qi Tianlei coughed and gave Xiaodai a look. He said, "Hurry up and ask the secretary to pour tea for the generals." Only then did Xiaodai come to her senses. She and the 5 women were testing in the office just now, and the 5 women were chattering, so she didn't hear the conversation between Qi Yu and his son. He looked at his son with a strange expression before leaving the room. Ji Zhongming coughed and said, "There's no need to trouble yourself. Mr. Qi, oh no, in-law. I think I can call you that now. Your son has been abducting my daughter for a long time." As he spoke, his gaze fell on the other 4 women. Qi Tianlei looked at Qi Yu with a bitter smile. He thought to himself, "You brat, let's see how you explain yourself after being caught red-handed by his father." Although that was what he was thinking, he still said, "Of course. It's my honor." Ji Zhongming said, "Everything that Qi Yu did this time not only saved the world, but also raised the reputation of our country to a whole new level. Now, our country is already on par with America. The people in the American military admire Qi Yu from the bottom of their hearts. His contribution to diplomacy cannot be described with just commendation. At the very least, America has decided to withdraw all the U.S. troops stationed in our various military bases in Asia. Their reason is very simple. With the Yenhuang Republic around, they don't need any more military forces." Qi Yu scratched his head and said, "There's such an effect? I didn't think of it." Ji Zhongming glanced at him and said, "Although the people of the country don't know of your existence, you are the greatest treasure in the eyes of the country's senior officials. Moreover, you have made such a great contribution that even the president doesn't know how to commend you. That's why the 8 of us rushed over as soon as you came back. First of all, we would like to express the country's respect for you. At the same time, we would like to announce a few things that you are more hopeful about. First, due to your special contribution to the country, the president has decided to give you a special approval. You don't have to follow the country's policy of monogamy. Whenever you want to get married, it will be directly approved by the State Council. It will also be registered." Qi Yu wasn't the only one who was surprised. Qi Tianlei and Ing Xiaodai, who had just entered the room, were also surprised. How could this work? The president had given special approval for him to marry more wives. This problem seemed to have been solved too easily. The eyes of Ming Ming and the other 4 women shone with excitement at the same time. Although they could all give up everything for the sake of Qi Yu, as women who didn't want to be able to officially marry the man they loved. At this moment, the country's recognition had completely conquered their hearts. It was as if all the fear they had felt during the battle against the asteroid was worth it. Qi Yu looked at Ji Zhongming dumbfounded. How could this work? Isn't this breaking the rules? Can the country's policy be so favorable? Ji Zhongming said snappily, "As a father, I really can't accept your flirtatious behavior. But, as a general of the country, I think that an outstanding talent like you, a talent who has made great contributions to the world, this kind of treatment isn't too much. From the perspective of evolution, with your excellence, your children in the future will inevitably be the most outstanding talent. Having more wives meant that you would have more children in the future. The president is now eager for you to marry more wives and add more talents to our country. However, all of this is done in secret. You'd better not spread it out, so as not to cause public opinion." Only then did Qi Yu confirm that it was true. His heart instantly went wild with joy. Even the treatment of the chairman of the military commission was nothing to him, but the country's recognition that he could marry multiple wives made him wild with joy. "That's great. The biggest problem has finally been solved. Uncle, thank you. Oh, thank you too. You can rest assured that I will always be a citizen of China. No matter what, I will protect China until the end of my power." Qi Tianlei muttered to himself, "This is actually possible, but this seems to be the best solution. I even tried to get him to join a religion that allows him to marry more wives. It seems like there's no need for that now." Ji Zhongming looked at Qi Tianlei and thought to himself, like father like son, he could even think of such a method, no wonder his son was so fickle. "Qi Yu, I can't stay for too long. We have to go back. However, when you have time, it's best if you can come to my place. I'm referring to the Yenhuang Seoul headquarters. There's still some information that I need you to confirm." Qi Yu's heart moved, and he said, "Uncle, you're referring to the U.S. Army's Mech Corps. Indeed, they're very powerful. Does our country have any research in this area?" Ji Zhongming's expression changed slightly, and he gestured to Qi Yu to keep quiet and said, We'll talk about this when we get to the Yan Huang Soul headquarters. It won't affect your family's happiness. Ming Ming, you little girl, when you're free, come home more often. You're crazy out there every day, it's like this. Ming Ming said with some grievance. Dad, how am I crazy? Don't forget, your daughter is also a recipient of the Diamond Guardian Medal. Hearing Ming Ming's words, Qi Tianlei completely fainted this time. Even his daughter-in-law has the Diamond Guardian Medal, my God. Am I not dreaming? Ji Zhongming shook his head helplessly, and left the Golden Grain building with the other 7 generals. Qi Tianlei and Qi Yu saw them out of the building, and after they got into the car, they returned to the office. Son, your dad's heart isn't too good. If something like this happens again, can you let me know in advance? Qi Tianlei looked at Qi Yu humorously. His mood at this time could not be described as good. In his eyes, his son was perfect. Qi Yu looked at his dad helplessly and said, My heart isn't too good either. I'll have to tell father-in-law about this problem later. Ming Ming giggled and said, You still dare to say this to my dad? Humph, it's not easy for Dad to acquiesce to the fact that you have a lot of wives this time. Aren't you afraid of getting beaten up? Qi Yu chuckled and said, Father-in-law can't bear to beat me. I've finally solved the problem of a father-in-law. However, I have the president's warrant. Does this count as a marriage according to the decree? As he spoke, his gaze fell on the other women. Ryue giggled and said, Marriage according to the decree? Don't forget, my parents are not that easy to talk to. They still don't know about our situation. Shang Bing giggled and said, I'm still the best, I don't have any burdens. Although she was smiling, there was a hint of sadness in the depths of her eyes. The plant's soul did not speak, but it hugged Shang Bing's arm, and secretly used its hand to stroke her back, using the warm energy of nature to comfort her. Although she was an orphan, Shang Bing, who did not even have parents, was obviously even more pitiful. Snow Girl's eyes reddened, and she lowered her head and said, I don't have parents to admit anything. If Dad and Mom were still here, they would definitely agree to us. Ying Xiaodai saw that something was wrong, and quickly went up to the 3 women into her arms and said gently, You silly girls, what are you crying for? Am I not your mother then? If Qi Yu dares to bully you in the future, tell me. See how I'll deal with him. Qi Yu quickly smiled apologetically and said, That's right, you can complain to Mom. I definitely won't fight back, and I definitely won't talk back. Ryue said apologetically, It's all my fault. I shouldn't have brought it up. We are a big family, and we are all family. No one is an orphan, right? Ming Ming also walked up, and together with Ryue, stood in front of the other 3 women, and held their hands tightly, with Ying Xiaodia's warm palm covering the top. Looking at these 5 beautiful daughters-in-law, she was already grinning from ear to ear. Qi Tianlei and Qi Yu looked at each other, and Qi Yu asked for help. Dad, their united front seems to be a bit too strong. Qi Tianlei laughed and said, Don't look at me, it's useless to look at me. I can't help you. When I'm at home, I listen to your mother. You should know this. It's over, looks like I have no status in the future. The reunion of the family lasted until the evening. Kiran's courtyard next to the Dragon Field courtyard had entered the final stage of finishing. Qi Tianlei originally wanted Qi Yu to choose the decoration himself. Qi Yu didn't have any objections, and let his father do whatever he wanted. In terms of living conditions, he didn't have any extravagant requests. The family had a delicious meal, and while eating, Qi Yu was surprised to find that the energy in his parents' bodies had increased very quickly. From an energy point of view, they already had the strength equivalent to the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. With their ordinary bodies, it was already very difficult to reach this level. Obviously, his blood played an important role, and the cultivation technique he left behind was enough for his parents and sister to cultivate for a long time. As long as they could improve their bodies through cultivation, Qi Yu was satisfied. Time always passed quickly, and Chi Tianlei knew that Chi Yu had a lot of things to do, so he didn't ask them to stay. Anyway, when Kiran's courtyard was built, they would move over as soon as possible. At that time, whether it was Chi Yu or his daughters-in-law, they could all move over. The 8 generals' visit today had made him understand that Chi Yu was not only his son, but also the entire Yanhuang Republic, and the entire East. The responsibility on his shoulders was much greater than he had imagined. On the way home, Chi Yu lay on the Cadillac chair, his head resting on Ryue's thigh, looking very comfortable. He was really too tired. Ever since the matter of the asteroid was settled, he didn't have much time to rest before hurrying back to Earth. Although his energy had recovered, he was still very busy. The process of rushing back from the asteroid to Earth had exhausted him both physically and mentally. When he came back, he went to see Ling'er and was about to go home to rest, but he was once again in Hell. In order to come back alive, he fought with the experts of Hell several times. Whether it was physical or mental exhaustion, it was too much. After a good meal, Chi Yu ate almost the same amount of food as the others combined. His mind was completely relaxed, and at this moment, he finally fell asleep. Lying on his side, comfortably resting on Ryue's thigh, one hand gently holding Ryue's slender and smooth thigh, his face was indescribably satisfied. His breathing was even and rhythmically drifted back and forth in the car. The 5 women's eyes were focused on him. They didn't dare to speak, lest they wake up Chi Yu from his sweet dream. This was the first time they saw such a quiet Chi Yu. This Zodiac king, their lover, had really experienced too many things. Emotions of regret and concern constantly appeared on the 5 women's faces. At this moment, they no longer had any intention of blaming Chi Yu. This man carried too much on his shoulders. Every time there was danger, he would always rush to the front. Although he was their common man, they didn't want to care too much about it. The past was the past. They just wanted to be with him forever, never to be separated. The car quietly drove into the Dragon Field courtyard. At this time, it was already very late. They hadn't seen Chi Yu for a long time, so Chi Tianlei and his wife had talked a lot with him. This was because Chi Yingying had gone on a spring outing. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have come back now. When the door opened, Ryue was a little surprised to find that the lights in the courtyard were turned on. Subconsciously, she quietly covered Chi Yu's eyes with her hand. She was afraid that the lights in the courtyard outside would affect Chi Yu through the car window. It was a very small action, but it was enough to make the other 4 women feel a burst of warmth in their hearts. In their eyes, Ryue's position as the big sister would never be shaken. As soon as the car entered the door, it stopped. It could have driven to the door of the villa, but at this time, the road forward was blocked. A total of 10 people, parallel to each other, blocked the Cadillac car. Their eyes were shining with excitement and a long-lost excitement. From left to right. In order, it was the rat Zodiac warrior Vol, the ox Zodiac warrior Mo Dan, the rabbit Zodiac warrior Modi, the tiger Zodiac warrior Su Dong, the snake Zodiac warrior Hu Guang, the horse Zodiac warrior Changjia, the sheep Zodiac warrior Yen Xiaoi, the monkey Zodiac warrior Ian, the dog Zodiac warrior Guan Ping, and the pig Zodiac warrior Guan Jing. Their eyes were full of expectation, looking at the stretch car in front of them, and at the same time, they straightened their bodies. The door opened, and Ming Ming nimbly jumped out of the car. Guan Jing was the first to speak. Ming Ming, boss is back. Why didn't you wake me up? It was brother Changjie and the others who came to tell me. Where is boss? When Chi Yu and the others were still reuniting with their parents, Ryue had already called the Zodiac Guardian Warriors to inform them that Chi Yu had returned. However, they didn't expect that in just a few hours, all the Zodiac Guardian Warriors had actually gathered at the Dragon Field courtyard. It must be known that Su Dong, who was the furthest away, had to fly for 2 hours to get back. Most of them looked travel-worn, and it was obvious that they had gathered not long ago. Ming Ming made a shushing gesture and said in a low voice, Chi Yu is asleep, let's not wake him up. He seems very tired, let's let him rest for a while. Guan Jing was stunned for a moment, and so were the other Zodiac guardian warriors. Boss was asleep? Ever since they knew Qiyu, they had never even seen how Qiyu looked like when he was asleep. All along, Qiyu spent his rest time in cultivation. Fell asleep. These three simple words seemed to represent a lot of things. The admiration in the eyes of the Zodiac guardian warriors became even more intense. Ah, why are you all here? At this time, Qiyu got out of the car with sleepy eyes. It was obvious that he didn't have enough sleep. His sleepy eyes swept over the Zodiac guardian warriors, and he reluctantly said, "Well, if there's anything else, let's talk about it tomorrow. You must be tired, so rest first. Ruyue, you make the arrangements, I can't do it anymore, I want to continue sleeping." As he said that, he put his arm on Ming Ming's shoulder and walked towards the direction of the villa. The other four women also got out of the car. Looking at the direction where Qiyu left, Ruyue sighed and muttered to herself, "He's really too tired. Since everyone is here, let's go back to the villa first. You need to know everything that happened before Qiyu came back this time." At this moment, the gentleness in her eyes had gradually disappeared, and what appeared was completely the appearance of a leader. When Qiyu was not around, she was the real head of the family, the leader of the Zodiac guardian warriors. Ming Ming's heart was beating very fast. She had never been so afraid, nor had she been so looking forward to it. Qiyu's breathing was still very steady, and he seemed to be in a half-asleep state again with his arm on her shoulder. His manly aura was so strong. Although she and Qiyu had already established a relationship, however, there had never been a chance for anything to happen between the two of them. Relatively speaking, other than the plant soul who had just joined, the degree of intimacy between Qiyu and her could be said to be the least. From Ryue and Snow Girl, she vaguely knew that Qiyu had already had sex with them, but nothing had happened between them. Vaguely. Regarding this, Ming Ming always had some resentment. At this moment, the man she loved was by her side. Ming Ming was very glad that she was the first to jump out of the car, and also happened to support Qiyu's body. What should she do now? Should she send him back to his room, or go back to her room? Would he do that to her? Surrounded by the manly aura of Qiyu, Ming Ming was already a little intoxicated. Her little face was red, and her heart kept beating faster. She was a little afraid, but also a little expectant. That feeling kept accumulating waves of strange feelings in her heart. Upstairs, that was Qiyu's room, and this was her room. But which room should she go to? Later, when Sister Ryue and the others came up, would they come to look for Qiyu? If she went back to her room, they should understand. Everyone had selfish times, and Ming Ming was no exception. When she thought that Qiyu could have had sex with the other girls, but nothing with her, she had a feeling of unease. She had an uneasy feeling, even though she knew that Qiyu would not dote on her less because of this. But she still felt that she should not let go of such a good opportunity. Even Ming Ming herself did not know how she returned to the room with Qiyu. When she gently put Qiyu on the bed, the soft pink bed had already told her that this was her room, not Qiyu's. Suddenly changing his form, Qiyu seemed to be a little sober, and he made a sleep-talking sound. He put his hand around Ming Ming's neck, and Ming Ming's delicate body suddenly rolled on the bed with him. Ming Ming felt that her heart was about to jump out of her throat. The unprecedented feeling spread all over her body in an instant, as if she was instantly paralyzed by Qiyu's thundercloud force. She did not dare to move at all, and the feeling of fear and expectation kept tearing the defense line in her heart. What would he do? Ming Ming thought nervously in his heart. Qiyu quickly gave the answer. He changed the position of his hand that was holding Ming Ming. It seemed that he felt cold because of the cool spring. He pulled the quilt next to him and Ming Ming's delicate body completely. His eyes were always closed, and his breathing was always so even, but his movements were very coordinated. Even in the state of sleepwalking, His physical function was still far beyond that of ordinary people. Ming Ming's heart beat even more violently. She felt that even the skin on her body had become red. She stuck to Qiyu and did not dare to move. She secretly said in her heart, "Sister Ryue, don't blame me. It's a pity that I haven't done anything with Qiyu. What would it feel like? What should I do now?" As a virgin, and a virgin who rarely got close to men, Ming Ming was simply like a blank piece of paper when it came to the matters between men and women. Or rather, she knew nothing about it. Moreover, in such a shy mood, even if she wanted to do something, her body had long been soft and powerless. She could not make any movements at all. Her powerful strength had already disappeared in front of the abundant Kirin aura on Qiyu's body. After Qiyu pulled the quilt over, he naturally nestled his body completely in the thick down quilt. Perhaps because he felt the existence of the hot body next to him, he naturally opened his arms and hugged Ming Ming's delicate body in his arms. With a moan, Ming Ming's body immediately became even more sore and soft. Was it coming? Was it really coming? Ming Ming quickly closed her eyes and did not dare to look again. At the same time, she was secretly looking forward to the arrival of that moment. However, what came was a thigh. After Qiyu hugged Ming Ming's right leg, he also put it on both of her thighs. Perhaps because the soft and elastic feeling made him feel very comfortable after he put it on, he even moved so that his thigh rubbed against Ming Ming's a few times, and he was completely attached to Ming Ming's body. At least half of his body weight pressed against Ming Ming. Smelling the delicate virgin fragrance on Ming Ming's body, a satisfied smile appeared on Qiyu's face again. His breathing became more even, and he directly fell asleep. Chapter 305. Ming Ming's body was stiff as she closed her eyes and waited. Her pretty face was flushed, and her whole body was constantly heating up from the contact with Yu Zhengyu. Why hasn't he come yet? It's so embarrassing. What is he waiting for? Ming Ming's stiffness lasted for a full 20 minutes, and when her mind was blank, she realized that a long time had passed. Her body seemed to be somewhat numb, especially Qiyu's leg that was pressing on her thigh, and it would often move. Ming Ming opened her eyes carefully. The darkness did not affect her eyesight. The smile on Qiyu's face looked so gentle, and that feeling of satisfaction immediately warmed Ming Ming's heart. When she was in the car, she was somewhat envious of Hai Ryue. If only Qiyu was using her thigh as a pillow, but now he was beside her, and also tightly pressed against her body. But why did she feel a little disappointed in her heart? Qiyu's face was close at hand and she could hear his breath. He really fell asleep? Ming Ming's gaze gradually became more gentle, and her stiff body began to gradually soften. She knew that her man was really too tired, or he simply did not know that she was still in his arms. But this feeling was really warm. If she could sleep in his arms like this for the rest of her life, how wonderful it would be. Gently moving her body to make herself more comfortable, Ming Ming raised her head and carefully kissed Qiyu's lip. Only then did she stick her blushing face on Qiyu's chest, and slowly closed her eyes. With happiness, with a little disappointment, feeling the heartbeat of her lover. The quiet night quietly left with the sound of even breathing. When the light of dawn shone through the window into the room, Ming Ming opened her beautiful eyes that did not have the slightest bit of sleepiness. Yes, she did not sleep all night, not because she could not sleep, but because she did not want to sleep. It had been a long time since she was alone with Qiyu, and it was such close contact. She really couldn't bear to sleep. Even though she was counting Qiyu's heartbeat, she kept herself awake at all times. Occasionally, she would open her eyes and sneak a glance at Qiyu or kiss him on the cheek, which made Ming Ming feel exceptionally happy. There seemed to be some changes in Qiyu's body. That was the first thing Ming Ming sensed when the sunlight appeared. He did not know what it was, but it was pressing against his lower abdomen. It was very firm and it seemed to be jumping. The heat continued to spread, causing Ming Ming's weakness, which had disappeared with great difficulty, to reappear. What is this? After all, she was also a university student, and she had taken health classes before. Soon, Ming Ming knew what was going on. She immediately leaned into Chi Yu's arms in embarrassment, not daring to raise her head. At this moment, Chi Yu's thigh was still on her body. She could not dodge even if she wanted to. Well, perhaps he felt something. Chi Yu frowned slightly under the sunlight, and his arm around Ming Ming loosened a little. Ming Ming's heart suddenly beat faster. Is he going to wake up? No way. She could not let him see such an embarrassing look. At the thought of this, Ming Ming suddenly seemed a little flustered. She carefully lifted Chi Yu's arm, trying to get out of his entanglement. However, it was fine if she did not know. When she lifted Chi Yu's arm and thought that she could escape, she suddenly felt a breath of hot air on her neck. Chi Yu's evil voice rang in her ear. "Little Ming Ming, where are you going?" Ming Ming was startled. Perhaps it was because she had accumulated too much shyness the whole night. She subconsciously screamed. She was a chicken warrior, and her scream was strong enough to make ordinary people faint. Of course, there was no ordinary person living in the Dragon Field courtyard, so of course, there would not be anyone who would faint. However, her sudden scream immediately spread to every corner of the villa. Ryue had already woken up. She always had the habit of waking up early, so when she heard Ming Ming's scream, she was stunned for a moment. Then, she blushed and chuckled. She said to herself, "This girl Ming Ming is really good. She actually persisted for the whole night until now? I can't seem to do it. It's her first time." Speaking of this, she couldn't help but think of her first time with Chi Yu. In that stone cave, that special feeling was buried in the depths of her heart, and she would never forget it. A faint light flickered. Raising her head to look at the bright sunshine outside, Ryue walked out of the room to arrange everyone's breakfast. Chi Yu looked at Ming Ming and covered her little mouth with his big hand. Only then did the scream abruptly stop. Chi Yu said with a bitter smile, "Baby, do you want everyone in the villa to know what you're doing?" Ming Ming looked at Chi Yu and felt the heat from his big hand. She quickly closed her eyes, wishing that she could find a hole to hide in. It's over, it's over. He's awake. Will he do something now? That thing of his seems to be very hard. Chi Yu let go of his hand and once again embraced Ming Ming. Looking at her cute appearance with her eyes closed, he couldn't help but laugh. "I'm not that scary. You look as if you're waiting for me to rape you." You. Ming Ming, who had always been eloquent, couldn't say anything now. She quietly opened her eyes and quickly stuck close to Chi Yu's body, not daring to move. She murmured, "Are you awake? Yesterday night you were very sleepy. I originally wanted you to sleep here while I went to sleep with Sister Ryue. But when you were sleeping, you pulled me and didn't let me go. So. Chi Yu chuckled and kissed Ming Ming's delicate face. Smelling the fragrance on her body, he said in a low voice, "It's okay. I understand. It must be a little pervert who was in love with me and brought me back to the room. It's over. Give me back my chastity. You have to be responsible for me." Looking at Chi Yu's exaggerated expression, Ming Ming was stunned. How could she have imagined that a person's skin could be so thick? She said in a panic, Don't scream. I didn't do anything. I'll take responsibility for you." Chi Yu didn't expect Ming Ming to have such a reaction. He couldn't help but look at her cute, flustered look. He flipped over abruptly and pinned her under his body, kissing her heavily on the lip. "How will you take responsibility for me?" Ming Ming could feel the changes in Chi Yu's body. For a moment she was completely speechless. She closed her eyes in a panic, and her delicate body even trembled slightly. Chi Yu's gaze shifted. Lying on top of Ming Ming's body, he felt the elasticity and comfort of Ming Ming's entire body through the full contact of their bodies. He said softly, "What a pity! Big the house was already built. Why did I sleep so soundly last night? To actually do such a thing that is worse than a beast, it really damages my heroic image." Although she was bashful, Ming Ming couldn't help but open her eyes and ask curiously, You didn't do anything last night, how could you be worse than a beast? And we. Chi-yu propped up his upper body. He looked at Ming-Ming evilly and said with a smile, "It's because I didn't do anything that I am worse than a beast. If you don't understand, ask Ryue later. Lazy bum, we should get up. Everyone is up. If we don't go out, I'm afraid they will laugh at us. If we don't go out, I'm afraid they will laugh at us." Chi-yu knew his own situation. Although Ming-Ming was very willing, there was already a huge fire of desire in his body. His body was already filled with lust, and coupled with his love for Ming-Ming, it was extremely difficult for him to suppress the lust in his heart. Because he knew that if he wanted Ming-Ming now, it wouldn't be over in a short time. He couldn't just get up at noon. He could only wait for the next opportunity. Anyway, she was his wife. He couldn't run away. His body was empty. Chi-yu had already gotten up. He didn't take off his clothes when he went to bed last night. At this time, he just tidied up a little and stood by the bed. Without Chi-yu in the quilt, it seemed that something was missing. Ming-Ming knew that she would never forget the intoxicating feeling in his arms. He didn't do anything. There was still nothing between them. This bastard. Feeling a slight chill in her lower body, Ming-Ming immediately held her delicate face with her hands shyly. She didn't dare to look at Chi-yu again. After tidying up his clothes, Chi-yu simply washed up in the bathroom in Ming-Ming's room. When he came out, he saw that Ming-Ming was still curled up in the quilt and had no intention of getting out. He sat on the bed and asked, "What's wrong, lazy bum? Why don't you get up?" Ming-Ming pulled down the edge of the quilt and peeked at Chi-yu. You go out first. I want to take a bath." Chi-yu blurted out, "How about I help you?" "No, hurry up and go out." Ming-Ming's heart raced again. This time, she looked at Chi-yu with a bit of resentment. Chi-yu laughed and turned to walk out of the room. He also hoped to be in such a good mood every day. However, it was also troublesome to have many wives. He couldn't be with Ming-Ming every night. If he did, he was afraid that his other wives would complain. Who should he go to tonight? As for Ryue, she was the best at coordinating with him. With sexual fantasies, Chi-yu slipped out of Ming-Ming's room. When he walked down the stairs, he couldn't help but blush. In addition to him and Ming-Ming, the other Zodiac Guardian warriors, Shangbing, Snow Girl, and the Plant Soul had already gotten up and gathered in the hall for breakfast. Chi-yu walked down the stairs as if nothing had happened. Everyone looked at him ambiguously. Yan Xiaoi quietly stuck to Chi-yu's side and said with a low laugh, "Boss, you're not bad. You must have been busy the whole night. You made Ming-Ming scream so loudly just now. You're the best. Are your legs soft?" "Soft my ass. Believe it or not, I'll make it hard for you in the future." Chi-yu laughed and was about to hit him, which scared Yan Xiaoi and made him run away. Chi-yu was very thick-skinned. Feeling everyone's gaze, he picked up a glass of milk and drank it. Then he began to eat his breakfast. Among his 4 confidants, Ryue and Snow Girl were a bit better. They only laughed occasionally. The Plant Soul didn't even dare to look at Chi-yu. Her pretty face would always blush inexplicably. Meanwhile, Shangbing looked at Chi-yu from head to toe as if he was looking at a rare animal. He muttered to himself, "Are you that strong? You did it all night." Although Shangbing's voice wasn't loud, everyone here was a master, so they all heard it. Hu Guang happened to take a sip of milk, and when he heard Shangbing's words, he sprayed it all over Ian's head and face. Immediately, the hall roared with laughter. Everyone stopped eating. They were laughing so naturally and happily. The special feeling between friends made them feel so satisfied. Chi-yu looked at Shangbing with a bitter smile. "Whether I'm strong or not, you'll know after you try me. How about it? Do you want to go back to your room now?" Shangbing snorted and puffed out his chest, which was obviously more than 36 "I'm not afraid of you. But, you just finished a night. Can you still do it?" Looking at Shangbing's provocative eyes, Chi-yu moved his shoulders and sat beside her. He grabbed Shangbing's hand and pressed it between his legs under the table. He whispered to her face, Do you think I can do it? Shang Bing stared blankly for a moment. The firm heat that came from her hand caused her heart to tremble slightly. Although she appeared to be the most forthright of all the girls, and had even gone through the special desert storm with Chi-Yu, she could not help but tremble slightly when she came into contact with that superheat again. Her pretty face blushed. She glared at Chi-Yu and quickly retracted her hand. Chi-Yu laughed contentedly and said, let's eat. It's really comfortable to sleep for a night. My body is a little stiff. And it seems that I need to find 2 people to exercise later. Is there anyone who volunteered? When his gaze swept across the bodies of the Zodiac warriors, no one dared to make fun of him anymore. Each and every one of them lowered their heads to the point where they couldn't be any lower. They were afraid that they would be caught by Chi-Yu, joking around with him, unless they were masochistic. This was the consensus among the Zodiac warriors. The storm of teasing subsided. At this time, Ming Ming shyly came down from upstairs. Looking at her pretty face that was as red as an apple, Chi-Yu really wanted to go up and take a bite. At the same time, he smiled bitterly in his heart. This girl, isn't she trying to cover up? Poor me, Ming Ming. I didn't do anything, but now I have to take the blame. What a loss, what a loss. Ming Ming was wearing loose casual clothes. Her hair was still wet after taking a bath, and her body was even a little warm. Her eyes were sparkling, and her skin looked even more ruddy after taking a bath, as if water was about to drip out. Even the Zodiac warriors, who were used to seeing beautiful women, couldn't help but be stunned. Sudong looked at Chi-Yu, then looked at Ming Ming and suddenly said, No, I can't stand it anymore. Boss, if you want to bully me, then bully me. However, before that, I must whistle the rogue's whistle. The rogue's whistle sounded, and everyone burst into laughter once again. Ming Ming's pretty face was even redder. This time, even Chi-Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. As the saying goes, the law doesn't punish the masses. Looking at everyone's happy appearance, even he couldn't help but laugh. It took a long time for the laughter to subside, and Ming Ming sat down next to Ryue. Ryue looked at her in surprise and said, Ming Ming, you are amazing. Looking at you, it seems that nothing happened. I always thought that my body was very strong, but after the first time with him, I couldn't even walk. How did you do it? Sitting there, Ming Ming finally calmed down a little. She picked up a small quail egg and was about to put it into her mouth, but when she heard Ryue's question, she immediately spat it out, and it fell into Chi-Yu's glass of milk, splashing on his face. The laughter that had finally stopped erupted again. Although everyone didn't know what Ryue said to Ming Ming, looking at Ming Ming's reaction, they couldn't stop laughing. I can't take it anymore. Boss, I'll go back to my room first, I can't take it anymore. Vol laughed and climbed up from his seat, turned around and walked upstairs. His hands were covering his stomach, and his whole body was shaking. Modi quietly stood up, and with a smile on his face, he followed Vol. Looking at their figures leaving, Chi-Yu couldn't help but be a little surprised. It seemed that although he didn't do anything, but between Vol and Modi, it seemed that a lot of things had happened. As the big brother, he really wasn't responsible enough. There was a chance that he must ask Vol how his development was going. Vol had changed a lot. Since the time when he was cultivating in the ancient behemoth period, his weight had been constantly decreasing, but his strength had been constantly increasing. The original Vol, because he was too fat. He looked very bloated. Now, he had gradually slimmed down, and his appearance was much better than imagined. Although he wasn't very handsome, he was definitely handsome since he was less than 18 years old. And Chi-Yu found that Vol's height had changed a lot in the past 2 years. Now, it looked like it was almost the same height as Modi. At this rate, boys would develop later. It wouldn't be long before Vol's height surpassed Modi's. In that case, they would be considered a good match. Age was not a problem. Breakfast was finished in a happy atmosphere. After tidying up everything, Chi-Yu gathered everyone in the living room. Last night, Ryue had already told everyone what happened this time. Hell can invade our world at any time. Although I managed to escape from hell this time, I'm still alive. Although I successfully ran back from hell this time, I was still very lucky. I won't say anything else. If we want to fight against hell, our strength is still far from enough. Everyone must continue to work hard and strive to reach the 9-cloud level as soon as possible. With every bit of strength we have, we will be able to protect our eastern world better. The atmosphere was very relaxed. Chiyu was back. The Zodiac Guardian God Warriors also had a backbone, although the invasion of hell seemed to be a very scary thing. But because of Chiyu's return, the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors actually didn't feel worried. After all, under Boss's leadership, they even survived the disaster of the asteroid. Why would they be afraid of hell? Their confidence in Chiyu had reached the point where it was almost blind. Chiyu, I just came back. After a few days of rest, I will go to the ancient beast era. I want to see how the battle between the divine beasts and the ferocious beasts is going. We have the advantage of Kunlun mirrors. If we can borrow the power of certain divine beasts, then we will be more confident in dealing with hell. At the same time, we can also bring Miss Xiao Lu back. Changjie smiled. Xiao Lu can be said to be enjoying herself there. I have never seen her so happy. Chiyu suddenly felt that his body was a little stiff because the 5 women were looking at him fiercely. He didn't need to ask to know what they were thinking. He hurriedly said, I will bring all of you. Everyone should go. The natural energy there is the most abundant. I can also help you cultivate. As for the extent to which you can improve, it is still hard to say. Actually, he had another purpose in going to the ancient beast era, and that was to find the whereabouts of Chiyu. Old Cow's 3 conditions had been fulfilled. Chiyu also had to fulfill his promise. Since he had already agreed and the old cow had even saved his life, he had to keep his promise. However, Chiyu really didn't dare to imagine how powerful old cow would become after obtaining Pangazak. The rest only lasted for 2 days. Although Chiyu really wanted to let go of everything and enjoy a few days of leisure, there was something on his mind. It was very difficult for him to calm down. He didn't stay idle during the 2 days of rest. First, he went to see General Ji Zhongming and contributed the special metals that he had obtained from the asteroid to the country. Without a doubt, he had once again made a great contribution to the country. The strength of those metals was the best in the world. Apart from their heavy weight, they even surpassed the strength of any known alloy. The Yanwang Republic had already started researching mecha warriors. However, the research process was very long, and they didn't achieve results like the United States. However, with these special metals, as long as they researched and analyzed them, they could cast alloys according to the composition of the metals. It would obviously make a special contribution to the mecha world of the Yanwang Republic in the future. However, Chiyu had made too many contributions. Even if the country wanted to reward him, they didn't know what to give him. With the help of the Kunlun mirrors, the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors once again arrived at the ancient Behemoth era. They were already very familiar with using the Kunlun mirrors to come here. Moreover, everyone's strength had greatly improved, so it was not difficult for them to support the energy of the Kunlun mirrors. Now, Snow Girl could almost pinpoint the location of their appearance at all the places that they had been to during the era of the ancient beast. Of course, when he returned to the modern world, he could do the same. This enabled them to travel less quickly. The emerald light gradually converged, revealing the original appearance of Chiyu and the others, the 12 Zodiac Guardian God Warriors. Including Chiyu, Shangbing, the Plant Soul, and Snow Girl, there were 16 of them in total. The Earths were no different from before. They were still the same. It's just in terms of military affairs, after the guidance of the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors, they were much stronger than before. At least they knew how to build fortifications and make the best use of the modern weapons. Transporting modern weapons to the ancient behemoth era could be said to be a win-win situation. During the ancient behemoth era, the human strength had been greatly enhanced, and Chi Yu could justifiably obtain a large number of fruits to use on his Kirin group. As for Hu Guang and Yi An's Sacred Flame sect, they had already kept a low profile in the modern world. Their main source of income was the sale of these ordinary weapons. As for the price, Kirin Group naturally gave them the most favorable price. The ancient ecological fruits were selling like hotcakes. They had already accumulated a large amount of capital for the Kirin Group. During the ancient behemoth era, because there was no longer a threat from the Jili people, the use of these weapons had also decreased. Therefore, the consumption was not high. Before Chi Yu left the last time, he had discussed with Yi Ruo that they could not support the use of firearms forever. If they did, it would destroy the balance of this world. However, with the hot weapons that they already had, it was impossible for them to survive. However, it could make it easier for humans during the ancient behemoth era to capture their own behemoth companions. Chi Yu's goal was to make humans stronger with the help of their giant beasts, not with the technology of the future world. Only in this way would the balance of the world not be destroyed. Only in this way could humans truly become strong without relying on others. When Chi Yu and the others appeared, they immediately received the highest level of hospitality, whether it was the Earth's or the other human races. He had long regarded Chi Yu and the Zodiac warriors as heroes comparable to Huang Emperor. The air is so comfortable. The plant soul took a deep breath as it exclaimed. The air was as refreshing as a mountain spring, nourishing her body. Only here could the natural energy in her body be completely released, producing the best effect. Chi Yu smiled and said, "We will be staying here for a few more days. It's perfect for you to cultivate." "Chi Yu, you're here." Yi Ruo's excited voice sounded. Her yellow figure lit up, and in the blink of an eye, she was already in front of everyone. Because Yi Ruo was Chi Yu's godmother, everyone hurriedly greeted her. Chi Yu went forward and said, "Mother, are you all right? The Jili people did not invade again, right?" Yi Ruo smiled and shook her head. She said, "They were greatly injured the previous time. Although we do not know where their foundations are and cannot completely destroy them, without a few decades' time, it will be impossible for the Jili people to launch another attack. With your reminder, humans are now developing rapidly. I believe that in the near future, even if the Jili people dare to invade our territory again, it will not be so easy. With your reminder, we humans are now developing at a high speed. I believe that in the near future, even if the Jili tribe dares to invade our territory again, it will not be so easy." Yi Ruo said, "Let's go. Let's talk in the tent." Yi Ruo said, "Let's go and talk in the tent. Let's not stand here." The freshest fruits were served on the table. The Zodiac warriors had long missed the taste of the fruits here, especially the ladies. All of them started to eat without caring about their image. Chi Yu sat beside Yi Ruo. As he ate the fruits, he asked, "Mother, how is Elder Emohua? Has there been any change in the strength of the divine beasts and the ferocious beasts?" Yi Ruo said, "Currently, everything seems to be developing in a good direction." "What do you mean by change?" Chi Yu said, "In other words, are the divine beasts strong enough to deal with the ferocious beasts?" Yi Ruo shook her head and said, "Without the Bull Demon King's command, the ferocious beasts have become a pile of loose sand. However, back then, the Bull Demon King forcefully unified all the ferocious beasts and made great progress. In terms of overall strength, we are still lacking. Now, we only hope that the young Kirin's generation can develop quickly. Only then, in the near future, with the leadership of the King of Divine Beasts, we can launch a counterattack against the ferocious beasts." Chi Yu muttered to himself and nodded. He thought to himself that although the situation of the divine beasts was much better than before, it was still very difficult to mobilize them to help him. After all, the number of ferocious beasts was huge. Although they were divided into 3 camps and restrained each other, their strength was still there. If he wanted to bring some divine beasts back to his world to help him deal with hell, it was obviously unrealistic. If the ferocious beasts lost track of the divine beasts and turned their spearhead to the humans who had just developed, it would not be worth it. It might even cause a change in history. That was definitely not what he wanted to see. Iruo was very smart. Looking at Chi-Yu's expression, she couldn't help but ask, "Chi-Yu, is something the matter?" Chi-Yu smiled and said, "It's nothing. Mother, don't worry. Oh right. I want to visit Senior Huang Emperor. I want to make a trip to Xuanyuan's tomb. Ever since I left, I haven't gone to see my master." Iruo looked at Chi-Yu thoughtfully. She could naturally see that Chi-Yu wanted the divine beasts to help him with something, which was why he asked the question just now. However, she didn't say much. Just like what Chi-Yu had predicted, the divine beasts didn't have any more power to help him now. At this moment, the door opened and a pleasant voice was heard. "Aunt Iruo, why are you looking for me?" A tall young lady walked in from outside. Her long black hair hung all the way to the ground, and her alluring figure was almost flawless. She was dressed in the standard leaves of the Earth Clan, which only covered the fullness of her chest and the mysteriousness of her lower body. Most of her skin was exposed, which was full of endless temptation. In the entire room, the sound of saliva being swallowed could be heard clearly. In the face of such temptation, which young man wouldn't have any thoughts? Even Chi-Yu was no exception. However, he reacted quickly. With so many wives by his side, if he were to show anything, he was afraid that these few days wouldn't be good. Before coming here, he had reunited with Ryue and Snow Girl, but Ming Ming and the other two women still hadn't had the most intimate relationship with him. The young lady was none other than the leader of the generation of goddesses in the music industry, the superstar Xiao Lu. Chapter 306. Seeing so many people in the room, Xiao Lu was also stunned. She said happily, "You're all here." Chi-Yu smiled as he looked at Xiao Lu, who had become much more lively and cheerful than before, and said, "Miss Xiao Lu, it seems that you are very happy here, right?" Xiao Lu nodded excitedly and said, "Of course. This place was simply a paradise on earth. The air was free from any pollution, the fruits that were blessed by the heavens and the earth, and the simple and honest people of the earthly tribe. A small wooden house, a clear river, bright and beautiful sunshine. These were things that didn't exist in our time. Here, I have countless inspirations every day, and I create songs that surprise even myself. I really don't want to go back. It seems that only the nature here truly belongs to me." Seeing her intoxicated expression, Changjie revealed a knowing smile and said, "Silly girl, this isn't a place that belongs to you after all. You are a modern man. He had to go back eventually. You've been out for a long time this time. Aren't you afraid that your parents will be worried?" Xiao Lu's eyes revealed a tinge of disappointment. She walked to the other side of Iruo and sat down. She said, "I also know that I have to go back eventually. It's just that I don't know if I'll have the chance to experience the beauty of this place again." "Chi-Yu, of course there is a chance. If you like. In the future, you can come here once a year. We will come here often. After all, what could be a better place for a vacation?" Xiao Lu's big eyes lit up and she said excitedly, "Really? That's great." Chi-Yu chuckled. He said, "Of course it's true. You just need to wait for the time we inform you to come here." Xiao Lu nodded repeatedly, and a special light flashed in her eyes. She suddenly said, "Chi-Yu, do you have any thoughts of setting up a music company?" Chi-Yu was stunned. "What are you doing? Do you want to cooperate with me?" Xiao Lu smiled and said, "Why not? If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to come to this wonderful world, and I wouldn't have been able to get so much inspiration. Even my body had become much, much better after coming to this world. In return, I am willing to become a singer under your company. Since everything I have is brought by you, then let me repay you in this way." Hearing her words, Chi-Yu couldn't help but be tempted. Xiao Lu's voice was the most beautiful he had ever heard. If he had her support, opening a music company would obviously be a good choice. He turned to look at Ryue and saw that Ryue was nodding at him. She looked anxious, as if she wanted Qiyu to quickly agree. Qiyu turned to look at Changjie. She asked, "Brother Chang, if Xiao Lu comes to our company, she will be very happy. Is there any problem with the contract?" Changjie said, "That's a small problem. The contract with the previous company is about to expire, and Xiao Lu has helped them make a lot of money. At most, we will just have to pay a small breach of contract fee. With our current power in Yanhuang, are we afraid of a music company looking for trouble?" Qiyu laughed and said, "Okay, then it's settled. Brother Chang, you used to be Xiao Lu's manager. You are obviously the most familiar with music companies. You will be in charge of running our company. It can be considered a subsidiary of Kirin Group. As for the name of the company, let's call it Kirin Music Communication and Development Company. I don't care about the rest. Just ask Snow Girl for any investment you need. I just want to be able to hear Xiao Lu's voice appear in the most beautiful way in every corner of the world." Changjie smiled bitterly and said, "You brat, you are simply a hands-off boss. You completely handed over the Kirin Group to Snow Girl, and now you throw a company to me. Can't you be responsible for something?" Qiyu chuckled, "There's no helping it. I was born a ruffian and didn't go to school. If I were to be in charge of the company, I'm afraid I will spend all the money. You are the most capable people, so I will have to trouble you. This matter is settled. Oh right, Snow Girl, last time I promised Shueiyue to set up a charity called the Kirin Charity Fund. Did she look for you and Ryue?" Snow Girl nodded and said, "She did look for her once, but she said that the money you gave was enough for the time being. She didn't need too much investment. She just told us." Qiyu said, "It is enough for her and her father to be in charge of the fund. They are all compassionate people, so you can rest assured. Miss Xiao Lu, we will be working partners in the future. How much do you want? Just ask your uncle for it. How much you were treated in the past will be the same now. Your uncle will be responsible for everything." Xiao Lu laughed and said, "No wonder Uncle said you are a hands-off boss. You really don't care about anything. Aren't you afraid that we will abscond with the money?" Qiyu pretended to be surprised and looked at Xiao Lu. "Abscond with the money? I am so scared. However, your uncle probably can't bear to part with me." Changjie said impatiently, "Don't be so ambiguous. We are just friends. We don't have a physical relationship." Pfff. Irua spat out the fruit she just ate. She looked at Changjie and Qiyu strangely. Everyone instantly burst into laughter. Even Xiao Lu was happy. She was completely different from her reserved image in the past. It seemed that during the ancient beast era, she had completely opened up her heart and mind. The water of the Green River was still so clear. Under the refraction of the sunlight, one could see the fishes swimming freely in the water. Qiyu floated up and directly fell into the water. Under the effect of the water thundercloud force, his body seemed to be swallowed by the Green River. He didn't make any sound. He instructed everyone to stay in the headquarters of the Earth race to cultivate. He came to the Green River alone. Xuanyuan's tomb was not a place that anyone could enter. The strength of the sword spirit was deeply engraved in Qi Yu's memory. He didn't want anyone to take the risk. As the owner of the Xianyuan sword, he was naturally not afraid. Naturally, he wasn't afraid. The ice-cold river water stimulated Qi Yu's body. The feeling of his whole body being penetrated made him feel exceptionally comfortable. Qi Yu's swimming skills were still very good. With the energy of the source of nature, he didn't need to breathe in the water at all. The source of nature could completely filter the nutrients in the river water into his body and maintain the balance of his body's energy. He arrived at the entrance of Xuanyuan's tomb. Arriving here, Qi Yu became a little hesitant. The last time he came here, with the help of Emperor Huang, he obtained the recognition of the Xianyuan sword. However, this time, he had already destroyed the Xianyuan sword. How was he going to face his own master? He sighed helplessly and circulated the energy in his body. Qi Yu stealthily entered the hidden door. With a flash of light, he stepped on the real thing. The moment Qi Yu stepped out of the door, a cold light flashed in his eyes. His whole body instantly shook. Inside Xuanyuan's tomb, everything had changed. There was a world of difference from the last time he came here. Why? Why did it become like this? Qi Yu exclaimed in shock. The last time he came here, Xuanyuan's tomb was completely a golden world. However, the current Xuanyuan's tomb had become a gray and white world. All the golden light had disappeared, and the originally abundant energy aura had already dimmed. All the golden light had disappeared, and the originally abundant energy aura had already dimmed at this moment. Everything around him didn't have a trace of energy fluctuation. It seemed to be no different from the ordinary world outside. In fact, there was even a sense of deathly stillness. Floating up, Qi Yu had already passed through the original Sword Soul formation in the blink of an eye. The Sword Soul had also disappeared along with the energy, and the huge suction force under the Sword Soul formation had long disappeared. Everything had changed. Everything had changed. Of course, Qi Yu knew why this place had changed. It was him who caused everything here to change. Apart from him, he couldn't feel a single trace of life in this world. Using his fastest speed, he arrived at the platform where Emperor Huang had been. Qi Yu let loose and shouted, "Master, Master, where are you? I'm here to see you." There was no reply. There was no energy fluctuation. It seemed like everything had already ended. Tears flowed down Qi Yu's face. Emperor Huang's voice and smile constantly flashed before his eyes like a movie. Everything had already ended. Master was no longer here. This was all because of him. The Xianyuan sword had been broken, and Xuanyuan's tomb had become a real tomb. Master was the guardian of the Xianyuan sword. Even the Xianyuan sword had been broken. How could Master still, standing there in a daze? Qi Yu didn't know what he should do. When he came here, he originally wanted to find Emperor Huang and ask him where he could find the heavenly fire to recast the Xianyuan sword. However, his current mood wasn't one of disappointment. Instead, it was one of despair. Emperor Huang was dead. His soul must have disappeared because the Xianyuan sword had been broken. The greatest leader of mankind, the ancestor of mankind, had died just like that. How laughable! As a descendant of Yen and Huang, he had actually caused the death of his ancestor. He had caused the death of his master, who had once taught him everything he knew. With a plop, Qi Yu knelt on the ground. Tears continued to fall from his eyes as he murmured, "Master, did you really die just like that? You are the greatest ancestor of mankind. I don't believe it. I definitely don't believe that you left this world just like that. Master, don't die. It's all my fault. I broke the Xianyuan sword and implicated you and brother Xianyuan's soul." Qi Yu didn't regret it. He didn't regret breaking the Xianyuan sword. At the last moment when they were facing the asteroid, he had tried his best to let as many people live. However, if he hadn't fought with all his might, the entire Earth would have been destroyed. At that time, even he himself had forgotten about life and death. How could he have cared about anything else? He hadn't expected the Xianyuan sword to be broken under such circumstances. Although the mistake had been made, the breaking of the Xianyuan sword had brought peace to the entire human world. In a sense, it was definitely worth it. Perhaps it was because he had accumulated too many things in his heart and shouldered too heavy a responsibility, but at that moment, Qi Yu had forgotten everything. He cried out in pain on the platform where Emperor Huang had once stood. In that place, he was the only one there. He didn't hide the emotions in his heart. He released them continuously and completely. Qi Yu didn't know how long he had been crying for. As his crying gradually stopped, his mind power suddenly sensed a faint energy fluctuation. The energy fluctuation was very faint, but it was very obvious in this dead world. Without any hesitation, Qi Yu's body floated up. When he landed again under the guidance of his mind power, he appeared at the highest point of Xuanyuan's grave. It was the place where he had pulled out the Xianyuan sword. The mark left by the Xianyuan sword on the huge rock was still clearly there. The faint energy fluctuation had come from the rock. Qi Yu wiped away the tears on his face. Slowly and solemnly, he walked in front of the huge rock. He extended his right hand and placed his palm on it. With the help of the natural source of energy, his mind power was slowly injected into the strange huge rock. The energy fluctuation trembled continuously, and Qi Yu's body trembled as well. Suddenly, he saw a bright light in front of him. Immediately after, the energy in his body was frantically extracted and injected into the huge rock through his right arm. With a soft clang, the two halves of the Xianyuan sword floated out of the Kongtong seal. The tip of the sword landed with a clanging sound and inserted itself into the crack left by the huge rock. The other half of the Xianyuan sword also fell and connected perfectly with the previous half. Under the fluctuation of energy, a special feeling was constantly produced. Although the connection was perfect, the shocking crack caused Qi Yu's heart to ache. Suddenly, a layer of golden light gushed out from the huge rock, and Qi Yu's palm was instantly bounced off. In a short period of time, Qi Yu was shocked to find that more than 80% of the energy in his body had been extracted. At this moment, his body could not help but feel weak. He hurriedly adjusted the energy to maintain the condition of his body. However, there was no more energy for him to absorb in the Xianyuan tomb, so he could only wait until he returned to the outside world to recover his strength. Seeing the sudden change in front of him, Qi Yu did not feel uneasy because of the large amount of energy in his body being absorbed. Instead, he was pleasantly surprised. If he could use his energy to exchange for the rebirth of the Xianyuan sword, it was definitely worth it to him. The golden light became more and more intense, causing the gray color of the entire Xianyuan tomb to gradually recede. The domineering golden light once again filled the space. This familiar feeling made Qi Yu could not help but tear up. This was the feeling of the Xianyuan sword. Xianyuan sword, are you really back? The golden light gradually grew, and layers of faint light enveloped the Xianyuan sword. The sun, moon, stars, mountains, and rivers on the sword's body emitted a faint golden light. However, the broken mark on the sword's blade was so obvious that it did not show any signs of healing. Qi Yu did not move. He only watched quietly. Even if there was only a slight chance, he hoped that the Xianyuan sword could return to normal. Feeling the rebirth of life in the Xianyuan tomb, he could not help but be filled with hope. Although he also knew that his hope might not come true, it was better to have hope than to have nothing. A long sigh sounded, causing Qi Yu, who was concentrating on observing the Xianyuan sword in front of him, to jump in fright. Subconsciously, he had already turned around, and his mental strength surged out, forming a large net, and shrouding in the direction of the sound. On the platform below, which was the platform he had been on, an illusory figure gradually became clear. Although the energy fluctuations were not strong, that familiar feeling still made Qi Yu's heart overjoyed. Almost immediately, Qi Yu floated down and knelt on the ground, his voice trembling as he shouted, "Master! Master, is that you?" The illusory figure flickered slightly, revealing the appearance of Huang Emperor, but his current energy was clearly very unstable. The figure looked clear and illusory at times, and his entire body seemed to have become transparent, as if it could disappear at any time. "Qi Yu, you are finally back." Huang Emperor's voice was kind and calm. He did not have the slightest intention of blaming him. Kneeling there, Qi Yu slowly lowered his head and said bitterly, "Master, it's all my fault. I did not properly protect the Xianyuan sword." So, Huang Emperor shook his head and said, "You do not need to say what happened. Xianyuan soul has already told me. At that time, after it broke, he immediately returned to Xuanyuan's tomb. After all, this is his home. Our waiting was not in vain. Under the guidance of the heavens, you finally brought the Xianyuan sword back. Qiyu was stunned. He raised his head to look at Huang Emperor, and said with great joy, "Master, are you saying that Brother Xianyuan's soul did not die? That's great. This is really great." Huang Emperor sighed softly and said, "Although he did not die, he was not much different from being dead. The damage that Xianyuan's soul suffered was much greater than you and I can imagine. His own consciousness had almost dissipated when the Xianyuan sword broke. Fortunately, he had existed in this world for far too long, and with the last bit of his consciousness, he was able to return to Xuanyuan's tomb. After he came back, he only briefly told me what happened to you. After he came back, he only briefly told me what happened between you two. Unless the Xianyuan sword is recast, otherwise, he will never wake up. Unless the Xianyuan sword is recast, he will never be able to wake up." The light in Qi-Yu's eyes became much dimmer. "It's all my fault. I didn't think that my actions would reach the bottleneck that the Xianyuan sword can withstand. But can you please tell me, how can I recast the Xianyuan sword, and revive Brother Xianyuan's soul?" Huang Emperor smiled slightly and said, "Silly child, you did not do anything wrong. I am proud of what you have done. Even when Xianyuan's soul returned here, the first thing he said to me was, 'You are indeed his master.' He also said, the moment he broke, 'You have already understood the true meaning of the benevolent sword.' That was something he had never expected, but from that moment onwards, he had completely acknowledged your identity as his master. In this regard, you are much stronger than me. You are indeed a descendant of the Yellow Emperor. At that time, even if it was me, I am afraid that I could not make such a decision so quickly. At that time, you have already put your own life and death aside. For the safety of our Earth, you are even willing to sacrifice your own life. Get up, my child, I have never blamed you. With a disciple like you, even if my consciousness really dissipates, I can rest assured." Qiyu slowly stood up with Huang Emperor's help. After listening to Huang Emperor's words, he felt much better. The recognition of his master, the recognition of the greatest ancestor of mankind, was the best comfort for him. "Master, is it because the Xianyuan sword broke, so this place?" Qiyu asked. Huang Emperor nodded and said, "Xuanyuan's tomb is the home of the Xianyuan sword. When the Xianyuan sword broke, this world will naturally be overturned. Fortunately, a bit of Xuanyuan's soul's spiritual consciousness returned here at the last moment, so that Xuanyuan's tomb can be maintained, and I can barely keep a trace of life. However, Xuanyuan's soul is too weak. When it fell into a deep sleep, I also fell into a deep sleep, and the whole Xuanyuan's tomb appeared to be in a state of exhaustion. Fortunately, you came back. With your energy support just now, not only did Xuanyuan's soul regain enough energy to repair its consciousness, but it also injected life into this place. As long as the Xianyuan sword is recast in the near future, everything in Xuanyuan's tomb can be restored to normal." Looking at Qi-Yu's expectant eyes, Huang Emperor smiled and said, "To recast the Xianyuan sword is absolutely impossible for others, but you are different. If you want to recast it, you can only rely on your own strength." Qi-Yu looked at Huang Emperor in surprise, and said in a low voice, "I once heard from a friend that if you want to recast the Xianyuan sword, you must have the heaven fire. But where can you find the heaven fire? Do you really have to go to the heaven? Or the plane that is called the heaven realm?" Huang Emperor shook his head and said, "Yes, your friend is right. If you want to recast the Xianyuan sword, you must rely on the heaven fire. However, the heaven fire is not in the heaven, but in your heart." "In my heart." Qi-Yu looked at his teacher in surprise. Huang Emperor nodded and said, "Yes, in your heart." The Xianyuan sword, as the most powerful divine weapon in the world, was forged by the god of fire, Zhu Rong. The Xianyuan sword itself was a perfect whole. However, no matter how powerful a divine weapon was, it had its limits. The Xianyuan sword's limit was when you were fighting against that small planet, so it was broken. Qi Yu, don't forget, you are not only a human, but also the ink Kirin of the 4 auspicious clouds who has inherited the Kirin's bloodline. As far as I know, the Kirin clan is the royal clan of the divine beasts, and Ink Kirin is the king of the royal clan. As the unprecedented Ink Kirin, you already have the best talent in the world. Even the energy you have now has reached the so-called God-level energy. One day, when your power surpasses the God level and reaches a whole new level, when the fire attribute energy you possess rises to the peak of the realm. With a drop of your heart's blood, coupled with the peak flame, it will be formed. When that time comes, the Xianyuan sword will be recast, and it will abandon the last impurities in its body, becoming a divine weapon among divine weapons. Do you understand? Qi Yu stared blankly at Emperor Huang. He had not expected this. To recast the Xianyuan sword, he would have to depend on himself. His brain was working at full speed. He quickly understood what Emperor Huang meant. Didn't the power that the Yellow Emperor spoke of require him to break through again? Given his current situation, if he wanted to make another breakthrough, he would need to reach the true 9 clouds strength of the Ink Kirin of the 4 auspicious clouds. When that time came, he would be able to recast the Xianyuan sword with his own power and resurrect Xuanyuan's soul. Master, I understand now. However, what should I do to raise my power to a sufficient level? Emperor Huang shook his head gently and said, I don't know. Your power has already surpassed the scope of my knowledge. In a sense, you have already become the most powerful person in this world. How can I predict your future? Your current power has already incurred the jealousy of the shop. At least in our world, it is almost impossible to raise your power to the true peak. As for how to do it, it is up to you. Sometimes, maybe luck was very important. However, you don't have to worry. The Xianyuan sword will stay here. With the support of the energy you just gave, at least Xuanyuan's tomb will not be in danger of dying out within 100 years. Xuanyuan's soul's consciousness will be reassembled under the nourishment of your energy. As long as the Xianyuan sword is recast, he will be resurrected. The Xianyuan sword will stay here, and it will always be in contact with Xuanyuan's soul's consciousness. This will ensure that the divine power of the divine sword will not be lost. Go, my child. We are all waiting for your return. I believe that it will not be too long. Master. Qi Yu choked with sobs and knelt on the ground once again. He looked at Emperor Huang's kind face. He kowtowed 3 times on the ground before bidding farewell to Emperor Huang. He floated up and walked towards the door that he had come from. The cool water of the sky-blue river could not calm Qi Yu down completely. When he returned to the headquarters of the Earth race, his heart was already filled with a desire for power. However, Qi Yu also knew that it was easier said than done to raise the fire thundercloud force to the peak of cultivation in this world. Moreover, before he raised all 4 thundercloud force to the current thundercloud force level, how could he possibly break through the final realm? This was obviously not something that could be achieved in a short period of time. However, he really hoped that he could recover the divine power of the Xianyuan sword as soon as possible. Without the Xianyuan sword by his side, he constantly felt uneasy. Just as Qi Yu was feeling a little anxious, the Bull Demon King's voice suddenly rang in his mind. Qi Yu, you've finished your task. Isn't it time to do mine? Qi Yu nodded and said, Of course. Since I promised you back then, I will definitely do it. However, when Qi Yu retreated last time, I couldn't find him. As long as you can find him, I will definitely accompany you. I believe that with our powers, no matter how strong Qi Yu is, he won't be able to resist us. A faint gray light floated out and shot out from between Qi Yu's eyebrows and condensed on the ground. Now, the Bull Demon King's figure was about the same as Qi Yu's. They were completely condensed. Old Bull seemed to be very anxious. Looking at him, Chi-Yu couldn't help but be shocked. Old Bull was indeed very powerful. In a short period of time, he had completely recovered the energy that he had used to fight against the experts from Hell. At the same time, he discovered that the energy ripples on Old Bull's body were mixed with some purple air current. In the originally strong evil energy, there was also a pure dark aura. Needless to say, Old Bull had evolved. Furthermore, his power had increased by quite a lot. Old Bull chuckled and said, "It's okay. You can't find him, but I have the confidence to find him. As long as you're willing to accompany me, it's fine. Chi-Yu, I didn't know that you humans are so trustworthy. How about this, as long as I can find Chi-Yu, I'll do one more thing for you later. Consider it my repayment to you." Chi-Yu couldn't help but rejoice when he heard the old ox's words. Among all the experts he knew, the old ox was undoubtedly the strongest. Through the battle in Hell, the old ox had already proven that even the great demon king, Satan, was not his match. If Old Bull was willing to help him, even if Satan and the Netherworld King joined hands, there was nothing to be afraid of. After all, Old Bull's power was too powerful. Just him alone could almost fight against the two strongest in Hell. As for the other creatures from Hell, Chi-Yu didn't care about them at all. Chi-Yu scanned Old Bull from head to toe and said, "Looks like I didn't go to Hell for nothing this time. Old Bull, your power has improved a lot." Old Bull glanced at Chi-Yu and chuckled. "Aren't you still the same? Your power has also improved a lot. It's just that the things we obtained are different. The pure dark energy in Hell is really good stuff. To me, it's the best tonic. I didn't expect that after I reached the highest realm that I could reach, I could increase my power again in Hell. The reason why I want to thank you is also very important." Chi-Yu looked at him somewhat helplessly. Although he was filled with wariness towards the old cow, he had no choice but to admit that this fellow was not only powerful, but also possessed intelligence that was not inferior to a human's. This made it extremely difficult for him to destroy the old cow. Moreover, Old Bull wasn't that easy to make use of. In Chi-Yu's heart, Old Bull was still the greatest hidden danger. Chapter 307. Old Cow looked deeply at Chi-Yu and laughed. "That's up to you. Now that we have the life and death domain, it's impossible for us to become enemies. Anyone who died would bring along one of them, wouldn't they? You and I can't bear to die. Perhaps we should be friends or companions. It's a pity that you're too ambitious. Otherwise, with our abilities, we can sweep through any plane in this world." Chi-Yu shook his head and said, "No, you're wrong. In this world, there will never be an absolute strongest person. Otherwise, how could you have been tricked by me when you were so powerful?" "That's right, Old Cow, there's something I don't understand. My abilities are much stronger than when we first met. However, I can feel that even now there's still a huge gap between us. However, I heard from Master Zagru that there's a barrier left behind by the gods in this world. When humans or other living beings reach a certain level, it's impossible for them to improve further. This level is known as the God level. Since that's the case, I've already reached the God level and can't improve any further, but why are you still much stronger than me?" In terms of abilities, Chi-Yu had never doubted Old Cow's power. He could even defeat Satan and send Lucifer flying with a wave of his hand. Old Cow's abilities were definitely not something that Chi-Yu could compare to. If he, Satan, and Old Cow were placed together, there was no doubt that they were on 3 different levels. This meant that, in other words, the difference between his current abilities and Old Cow's was definitely not as simple as one level. After hearing Chi-Yu's question, Old Cow's expression changed. His gaze towards Chi-Yu flickered. He seemed to be worried about something, and his aura was slightly unstable. Irritation, brutality, and other negative auras were continuously released from Old Cow's body. "Chi-Yu, there's something. It's better that you don't know. I can only tell you that in this world, perhaps other living beings are restricted. However, I'm an exception. There's nothing that can restrict me. Otherwise, why do you think I was able to use my own strength to lead the ferocious beasts to rise up and completely suppress the divine beast? If it wasn't for your appearance, I'm afraid that this ancient giant beast era would have already been my world, and I would be the sole ruler. Looking at Old Cow's slightly angry expression, Old Cow's eyes lit up. Chi-Yu smiled indifferently and said, I can't help it. Who asked Kiran's blood to flow in my body? He wasn't afraid of the old bull acting up. If the old bull attacked him, he wouldn't even retaliate. Although Chi-Yu had always been worried that Old Cow would think of a way to free him, at least the effects of the life and death domain still existed. Old Cow was very smart. Therefore, he would never act recklessly. Old Cow chuckled and said, At the start, I didn't dare to do anything. I really wanted to tear you into 1,000 pieces, but I thought it through. I realized that perhaps it was because I had been strong for too long during the ancient beast era. You made me too proud and neglected the role of wisdom. That's why I fell into your trap. Although I'm restricted by you now. But I have to admit that you have taught me a very important lesson. You made me realize the importance of wisdom again. Frankly speaking, my life can be considered endless. So what if I'm no longer in the ancient beast era? Furthermore, you brought me to the era that belonged to you, and allowed me to see many things that I had never seen before. In your era, humans were actually so terrifying that they could actually create such powerful weapons. If it was really during the ancient beast era, I'm afraid that apart from a few of the most powerful beasts, other places wouldn't be able to survive the modern weapons created by humans. Therefore, I don't hate you now. Although you made me lose my freedom, you also let me know many things. Furthermore, under the influence of the source of nature in your body, my abilities improved greatly. This is something that I didn't expect. Therefore, I don't hate you now. Chi-Yu, why don't we cooperate? As long as you agree to cooperate with me, I can make a call during the ancient beast era, and all the beasts will definitely be loyal to me again. By then, no matter if it's this era or your era, we will be the strongest. I can even think of a way to raise your abilities to a higher level and let you recast the Xianyuan sword. By then, even if the fire and water gods return, we won't have to be afraid of anything. Looking at the Bull Demon King's ambitious gaze, Chi-Yu couldn't help but shudder. Frankly speaking, he was indeed tempted by the Bull Demon King's suggestion. If the Bull Demon King could completely subdue all the beasts, it would definitely be an army that was even more terrifying than the Burning Hell Legion. However, it was obvious that the Bull Demon King wanted to do the same thing as Satan, which was to invade Earth. Cooperating with him was definitely asking a tiger for its skin. Although Old Bull looked very gentle now, the tyrannical and evil nature in his bones wouldn't change. This was the so-called, it's easier to change a leopard's skin than a leopard. Chi-Yu glanced at Old Bull plainly and said, Old Bull, you don't have to say any more. It's impossible for us to cooperate. You're my order now. At the same time, we're also restricted by the realm of sharing life and death. You're right, I don't want to die. However, you should have seen that if anyone threatens my friends and family, I'm definitely not afraid of death. Let me remind you again, don't play any tricks. Otherwise, even if you're more powerful than me, I believe you understand that if I want to die, you definitely won't be able to stop me. Old Bull looked at Chi-Yu with a ferocious glint in his eyes. Of course, he knew that what Chi-Yu said was the truth. In Chi-Yu's body, his power had indeed increased by a lot, and he had also obtained many benefits under the illumination of the purple sun in hell. However, it still couldn't change the fact that Chi-Yu's power was rapidly approaching his. Back then, he hadn't taken a human seriously at all, but now, he already possessed the extremely powerful Zodiac King. In Old Bull's heart, Chi-Yu was even more terrifying than Satan. Just the Kongtong seal alone wasn't easy to deal with. Old Bull wasn't absolutely confident that he could defeat Chi-Yu and also stop him from doing other things, such as committing suicide. Old Bull's eyes lit up with seriousness. He said in a deep voice, Chi-Yu, Do you know that you've already let go of the best opportunity? Then, come. We can become partners. You're also the first creature in this world that I admire and made such a suggestion. Chi-Yu smiled and said, It seems like I should feel very honored to be treated as an equal by you, old bull. If you can give up the evil in your heart. Of course, I don't mind being friends with you. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that's impossible for you. Old Bull sneered and said, You humans have a saying, if we don't get along, half a sentence is too much. I don't want to discuss with you anymore. As the saying goes, the winner is the king, and the loser is the bandit. Since I was tricked by you and became your captive, you can say whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. Now, I'm starting to search for Chi-Yu's whereabouts. As long as I find him, you just have to accompany me once. You don't have to do anything. You just have to help me prevent him from escaping. Leave the rest to me. Pangu's axe is a waste in that kid's hand. Chi-Yu naturally wouldn't doubt Old Bull's strength. Back then, when he faced Chi-Yu, he had grabbed Pangu's axe with his bare hands. This was something that Chi-Yu didn't even dare to think about. Old Bull was indeed strong. It seemed like he really had to think of a way. Let's see how I can restrain him. Old Bull sat cross-legged on the ground and made a strange pose with his hands. His index, middle, and ring fingers were clasped on his palms. His thumb and little finger were curled up. Then, he raised his arms and placed them on the sides of his head. His hands and horns were dazzling. That look was truly comical. Chi-Yu wanted to mock Old Bull. Very quickly, his expression turned serious. He could clearly see. At the center of Old Bull's forehead, a yellow light shone. When the yellow light first appeared, it was just a tiny spot of light. Then, the spot of light gradually moved downward. It passed through the space between his eyebrows and became a yellow ray of light. Then, a strange scene appeared. The yellow ray of light split to the side. Chi-Yu was shocked to see that between Old Bull's eyebrows and his forehead, there was another eye. It was a vertical eye. Oh my God! What is this? Could this Old Bull be the legendary Erlang Shin? Chi-Yu was dumbfounded as he looked at the changes on Old Bull's body. At this moment, the evil energy aura was completely restrained. Old Bull, who was sitting upright, looked more like a righteous super expert. At this moment, it was obviously the best time to sneak attack Old Bull. If Chi-Yu still had the Xianyuan sword, he might be able to injure Old Bull severely if he used his full strength. However, the life and death domain did not only restrict Old Bull. At the same time, it restricted Chi-Yu. If Chi-Yu killed Old Bull, it was equivalent to destroying himself. This was also why Old Bull was not worried at all when he displayed his power in front of him. An even stranger scene appeared. A yellow ray of light shot out from Old Bull's third eye. In the blink of an eye, it expanded and formed a tiny fan shape. It shot into the wall in front of him. Through his mental power, Chi-Yu could clearly sense that the yellow light immediately spread out after it left the room. It formed a fan shape that gradually expanded and floated out. What technique was this? It seemed to be an investigation using mental power. However, Chi-Yu could clearly sense that it was not as simple as mental power. Otherwise, why did this not happen to him? Furthermore, the range of the energy that Old Bull released was clearly much further than his mental power. Old Bull's body started to rotate slowly. His tall body floated up from the ground and stopped 3 inches above the ground. The yellow ray of light shot out from his third eye also started to rotate with his body. He rotated very slowly, but his movements were very harmonious. As he looked at Old Bull, Chi-Yu could not help but think that there were more strange things in this world than he had imagined. At least, what Old Bull was doing now was something that he had never thought about. He had to ask Old Bull what was going on later. Old Bull's rotation lasted for half an hour before he completed a full rotation. The yellow ray of light slowly disappeared, and the eye on his forehead closed. The yellow ray of light turned into electricity and disappeared in the middle of his forehead. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, it would be very difficult for him to believe that a strange eye had appeared there. Old Bull opened his eyes slowly. He seemed a little tired. He frowned and muttered, "Impossible! Why can't I find him? Where exactly did Chi-Yu go? Could it be that he possessed the power to leave this world? No, this was impossible. He was far from that level. Even if he had the same god-level power as Chi-Yu, it would be impossible for him to escape the detection of my heavenly eye." Chi-Yu sat down beside Old Bull and said, "What's wrong? Can't you find Chi-Yu?" Although he asked out of concern, Chi-Yu could not help but rejoice in Old Bull's misfortune. "It's good that you can't find him. If you obtained Chi-Yu's Pangu axe, wouldn't it be even more difficult to deal with you in the future? Good job, Chi-Yu. Continue to hide and don't let Old Bull find you." Old Bull shook his head and said, "That's not right. Chi-Yu is definitely still in this era. I just don't know what method he used to hide his aura so well. It's almost impossible for him to escape from my detection. Since when did he have such a powerful ability? Even if it's you, it's impossible for you to hide from my heavenly eye." Chi-Yu asked, "Heavenly eye? Is that the third eye you had just now? What ability is that? You said that you can't find Chi-Yu. Perhaps it's because the detection range of your heavenly eye is too small." Old Bull snorted in disdain and said proudly, "What do you know? My heavenly eye is an ability that I just unlocked after obtaining the dark energy. It can be said to be a super ability that is similar to a domain but surpasses it. As long as Chi-Yu is not dead and is still in this world, I will definitely be able to discover his existence through my detection." Hearing Old Bull's words, Chi-Yu could not help but be shocked. He said in shock, "Could it be that your so-called heavenly eye can see every corner of this world?" Old Bull nodded proudly and said, "Of course. Otherwise, why would I say that it's an ability that surpasses a domain? This is my innate ability. It's impossible for other living beings to have it. If I'm not a god." At this point, Old Bull suddenly realized that he had said something wrong and hurriedly changed his words. "If it's not me, it's impossible for other people to have this ability. Even you can't. If I can't even find Chi-Yu with my heavenly eye, it proves that Chi-Yu is either dead or his power has surpassed mine and he can use his own energy to hide from my detection. However, how can his power surpass mine? If he was really more powerful than me, he would not need to hide from me. As for the third situation, it's that he's protected in a powerful domain. However, such a domain almost doesn't exist in this world. After all, who can create a domain that's more powerful than mine?" Chi-Yu did not say anything. He was still shocked by Old Bull's heavenly eye. All along, he had been very confident in his mental power. With his mental power, he could detect a range of 1,000 square kilometers. This was almost the size of a large city. However, Old Bull's heavenly eye could see every corner of the entire Earth. It wasn't even affected by gravity. Was this the so-called eyes that could bend? There were simply too many secrets on Old Cow. Even he could not fully understand them. At this moment, he could not help but be more wary of Old Bull. Old Bull looked at Chi-Yu and his aura kept changing. After a long while, his eyes suddenly lit up. He seemed to have thought of something. "Damn it, I know. I know where this guy is." Chi-Yu was shocked. "Did he find Chi-Yu?" Old Bull said hatefully, "In this world, there are only a few places that can hide from my heavenly eye. If I'm not wrong, Chi-Yu must be scared after being beaten up by us. In order to increase his strength to an even greater degree, he went to look for other divine weapons. Only in the domain created by the artifact can he hide from my heavenly eye. Places like Kunlun's divine illusion and Xuanyuan's tomb are like this." Chi-Yu's expression changed slightly and said, "Do you know where exactly he is now?" Old Bull said angrily, "How would I know? If I knew where the artifacts were hidden, would I leave them for that bastard? As long as the restrictions of the gods aren't limited to humans, I am confident that I can take them down. I just can't find where the artifacts are hidden." It looks like Chiyu's luck is not bad. I have underestimated him. His ambition can even be compared to mine. However, so what if he finds another artifact? Could it be that he can defeat me with just 2 divine weapons? Without absolute power, it is impossible to unleash the true power of the artifact. On this point, you and Chiyu have the same problem. In your hands, the divine tool is simply a waste. However, you are slightly stronger than him. You have the help of your partners. At certain times, you can unleash the true power of the artifact. Just like when you led the asteroid away. If I'm not wrong, since the birth of the Xianyuan sword, it has never unleashed such a strong Big Dipper. If not, it wouldn't have broken. It relied on its partners to reach the peak of the artifact. After all, it didn't unleash the true power of the artifact. If you could unleash that level of Big Dipper, the Xianyuan sword wouldn't have broken. The control of energy. It is extremely important to use the artifact. Chiyu said with interest. In that case, you are very good at using the artifact? Bull Demon King said proudly, of course. It's just that my luck isn't very good. Otherwise, if I only had one artifact in my hands, do you think you can still stand here and talk to me? I have a lot of abilities. It's just that you haven't seen them all. Chiyu had a warm smile on his face. However, behind the smile, there was a hint of cold, killing intent. Old Bull, what do we do now? Since you can't find Chiyu, we have no way to deal with him. You should know that I can't stay here forever. Our era could face the invasion of hell at any time. I have to go back and prepare to face it. Old Bull glanced at Chiyu and raised 3 fingers. 3 days. Stay for another 3 days. If I still can't find Chiyu's whereabouts, we will go back to your era. Don't worry, I won't make things difficult for you. Chiyu looked at him in surprise and teased. Old Bull, when did you become so reasonable? This isn't like you anymore. Old Bull said calmly. Don't you feel that my personality is becoming more and more like you humans? As the highest life form in this world, I will never look down on other life forms because they are of a lower level. Every race has something worth learning. For example, the intelligence of humans and some special things. Going back is going back. However, you have to promise me that you will go back to the era of the ancient beasts every 3 months. You want me to find Chiyu's whereabouts. I don't believe that he can hide forever. Once he appears, it will be the time of his death. Now, I hope that he can obtain another divine artifact. If that's the case, it will be good for me. Looking at the sinister smile on Old Bull's face, Chiyu could not help but pray in his heart. Chiyu, you fool, better not appear. I would rather the divine artifact be in your hands than in Old Bull's. Old Bull was already so powerful. If he obtained 2 more divine artifacts, what level would he reach? There was probably no one in this world who could subdue him. 3 days passed very quickly. Although Old Bull was Chiyu's messenger, as long as the 2 of them were not too far apart, there would be no problems. Old Bull was rather tactful. He did not cause trouble for Chiyu at all. He just cultivated in his room. However, he had to use his heavenly eye once a day to find Chiyu's whereabouts. Chiyu stayed with Ryue for the past 3 days. They had an in-depth conversation. Of course, their conversation was not just about emotions and bodies. Among the 12 Zodiac Guardian warriors, Ryue was undoubtedly the strongest. She was also the one closest to the 9th cloud level. Chiyu's current strength could no longer continue to increase. Thus, he simply used his cultivation time on the others. The origin of nature was the best supplementary energy for cultivation. He could not waste it. Ryue was Chiyu's first choice. The reason was very simple. Ryue was the closest to the 9th cloud level. Ever since she reached the 8th cloud level, Chiyu understood. When the Zodiac Guardian warrior reached the 9th cloud, the increase in strength would not be like the previous few clouds, where it was just a gradual increase, but a qualitative leap. Even if only one Zodiac Guardian warrior reached the 9th cloud level, it would be a huge increase to the strength of the entire group. 3 days of cultivation was not considered long for the Zodiac Guardian warriors. However, the method that Chi-Yu chose had an unexpected effect. Ever since Ryue reached the 8th cloud level, it was extremely difficult to cultivate. Even after cultivating for a few days, there wouldn't be any changes to the dragon cloud force. However, under the effect of Chi-Yu's wholehearted release of the enormous amount of origin energy, her cultivation speed was like a rocket, soaring in a straight line. Perhaps it was because Chi-Yu's origin of nature had undergone a qualitative change. In just 3 days, even Chi-Yu did not expect this. It actually helped Ryue to raise her strength to the final bottleneck. That's right, the 8th cloud level bottleneck. Now, Ryue only needed to make another breakthrough. She would be able to reach the strongest 9th cloud level. We're going back tomorrow. Everyone get ready. We're going out to get some treasures today. Early in the morning, the moment Chi-Yu came out of Ryue's room, he spread his voice to every Zodiac Guardian warrior's room. The Zodiac Guardian warriors were already used to Chi-Yu's orders. In just a short while, everyone came out of their rooms. Under Irua's arrangements, Chi-Yu and the rest were staying in a small courtyard in the 2 clan. There were elite 2 clan soldiers guarding the courtyard. No one would come to disturb them. Yan Xiaoi laughed and said, "Boss, what treasure are we going to get today? Is it something good that can increase our strength?" Chi-Yu unhappily glared at him and said, "If you want to increase your strength, you must first work hard on your own cultivation. Otherwise, how can you increase your strength? Among everyone, your attack is the weakest. If you don't work hard, don't blame me for not warning you when you meet with danger." Yan Xiaoi did not panic because of Chi-Yu's threat. He still had an evil smile on his face and pretended to be helpless. "I don't want my attack to be weak. But, as a Zodiac Guardian warrior, I was born this way. I am not good at fighting. I have no choice. Even if I reach the 9 cloud level, my fighting strength will not be too strong. Boss, don't make things difficult for me. Of course, I will work hard. I have been single for more than a year. I don't even have time to find a girlfriend." Hu Guang said in a weird tone, "Is that so? Why do I remember seeing you flirting with a beauty from your own Zodiac Guardian team? It seems like you often go to other people's rooms to have some deep conversation." Hearing Hu Guang expose his shortcomings, Yan Xiaoi became angry and said, I am stronger than you. At least we are willing. No one is willing to be with you if you want. Who asked you to look so wretched?" "What? You dare to say that I am wretched? Believe it or not, I will beat you up until your mother can't recognize you." Hu Guang pushed up his thick glasses and stared at Yan Xiaoi with his beady eyes. He looked like he was about to beat him up. Yan Xiaoi said proudly, Come on. You think I am afraid of you? Little guy, I don't know who is going to beat up whose mother can't recognize him." Humph. Among the Zodiac warriors, if there was one person that Yan Xiaoi was least afraid of, it would undoubtedly be Hu Guang. The 2 of them were polar opposites among the Zodiac warriors. Neither of them were Zodiac warriors that focused on fighting. Yan Xiaoi's main ability was healing, while Hu Guang's was poison. In terms of their strongest abilities, Yan Xiaoi was the bane of Hu Guang. Although Hu Guang's Emperor Black Mamba's poison was strong, when Yan Xiaoi advanced to the 6th cloud level, his poison was no longer a threat to Yan Xiaoi. As for his physical attack, it was still different from other Zodiac warriors. Although Yan Xiaoi's attack was weak, he was still good at defense. Especially his thundercloud force, which was the bane of poison, it made Hu Guang feel very uncomfortable. Therefore, the 2 of them fought all day long, and Hu Guang couldn't do anything to Yan Xiaoi. Hu Guang pulled Ian aside and acted like a big brother. "Saiyan, go. Your brother is being looked down upon. Help me teach him a lesson." Ian glanced at Hu Guang, then looked at Yan Xiaoi, and turned his head to the side. "What does this have to do with me? You can solve your own problems by yourselves. You, at worst, in the future Ian laughed and said, "What about in the future?" Hu Guang stared at Ian and said, "Fine, you're using this opportunity to blackmail me, aren't you? Boss, look at them. They're teaming up to bully me. You have to help me get justice." Chi Yu looked at them laughing and joking and said unhappily, "All right, stop fooling around. Our time is limited. Let's get down to business first. Let's go. I'll tell you what to do today as we walk." As he spoke, Chi Yu waved his hand, and a layer of green light rose into the sky. The green light seemed to be real, and it enveloped everyone's body. Except for Xiao Lu, the group of 16 people flew away in front of Chi Yu's thundercloud force as if they were sitting on a flying carpet. His calm appearance made the people below stare in a daze. God, he must be a god descending to earth. Chi Yu controlled the thundercloud force and flew away. Although the Zodiac Guardian God warriors didn't say it, they couldn't help but admire him in their hearts. Even the few Zodiac Guardian God warriors who could fly knew that they couldn't carry so many people. What's more, Chi Yu only relied on energy to carry everyone. This kind of strength was indeed far beyond their reach. Vol stood beside Chi Yu and asked curiously, "Boss, what are you taking us to do? What kind of treasure is it? Is it another divine artifact?" Chi Yu shook his head and said with a smile, "It's not that easy to get a divine artifact. This time, everyone has a share of the treasure we're looking for." As soon as they heard this, everyone suddenly became spirited. They surrounded Chi Yu and asked. Chapter 308. Upon hearing Chi Yu's words, everyone was overjoyed. Although the Zodiac Guardian God warriors didn't say anything about it, even Ru Yu was envious of the orders given by the members of their respective teams. One must know that the golden-winged eagle was already an extremely powerful existence among the dire beasts. Coupled with its profound cultivation, even the weakest Zodiac Guardian warrior, Yan Xiaoi, couldn't deal with a 6,000 years old golden-winged eagle. Not to mention one that was more than 10,000 years old. If they had a powerful envoy, it could be said that their strength had suddenly increased by a level. "That's great. Boss, you have to find me a powerful messenger. You must know that I, your brother, need the most protection." Yan Xiaoi pretended to be pitiful and looked at Chi Yu with flattery. Chi Yu nodded and said, "I've already said that everyone has a share. I will try my best to find a suitable envoy for you according to the characteristics of your strength. Among you, those who can fly don't think about flying beasts. Moreover, our target today is the dire beast. The strength of the dire beasts and the divine beasts is not balanced. Let us help the divine beast." Poor Bull Demon King. After 3 days, they still couldn't find any trace of Chi Yu, so they could only hide in Chi Yu's body again. Chi Yu had long planned to help the Zodiac Guardian warriors to improve their strength again during the ancient Behemoth era. Last time, he only gave each Zodiac Guardian warrior a golden-winged eagle. The main reason was that the golden-winged eagle's strength was already very strong. Not only could it fly, but it also had many special abilities. For the Zodiac Guardian warriors who couldn't fly, it could undoubtedly maximize their mobility. Moreover, it could also greatly weaken the strength of the golden-winged eagle clan. However, the Zodiac Guardian warriors were different. As the absolute main force of the Zodiac army, there was a huge gap between the abilities of each of them. If they also used the golden-winged eagle, it would not be suitable. For example, Ming Ming and Ryua already had the ability to fly. If they added a golden-winged rock, it would obviously be a waste of the quota. Previously, they had to deal with the Jili people. He didn't have enough time to help every Zodiac Guardian God warrior find his messenger, so he hurriedly returned to the modern era. However, things were different now. In order to make the Zodiac army more powerful, Chi Yu had made up his mind to help everyone find their Ultralisk companion. In the midst of their excitement, everyone began to think about what kind of messenger would be best. Chi Yu's words woke them up. With the strength of the Zodiac Guardian God warriors, once everyone reached the 9 cloud level, they would be able to defeat the Zodiac Guardian God warriors. Although it might not be as powerful as the humanoid beasts, it would definitely be able to put up a fight. In other words, the strength of the Zodiac guardian god's warriors was definitely not weaker than the strongest dire beast. Therefore, when choosing their tokens, they must be able to supplement their own strength, to make up for their own weaknesses. Among everyone, the best choices were obviously Yan Xiaoi and Guan Jing. These two guys were better at defense. Their own attack power was very weak. Guan Jing could still attack wretchedly. On the other hand, Yan Xiaoi's attack power was almost negligible. Therefore, they obviously had to choose the dire beasts with strong attack power. As for the others, they had to consider more carefully. Soon, under Qi Yu's control, everyone had flown hundreds of kilometers away. Qi Yu led everyone to land on a hill. He smiled and said, "How is it? Have you all thought about what kind of messenger you want?" Yan Xiaoi said, "I've thought about it. As long as it has strong attack power and can protect me, it's fine. I don't have any other requirements. Even if it looks as ugly as Hu Guang, I'll accept it." "I'm counting on you," Hu Guang roared. His eyes were wide open. "I've also thought about it. As long as it can help me beat up Yan Xiaoi every day, even if it looks as wretched as him, I'll accept it." Qi Yu glared at the two of them. "If you two continue to quarrel, you might as well not have any messenger. What about the others? What do you all think? Let's discuss it together. I'll give you some advice. We should be able to choose a better one." Under Qi Yu's suggestion, everyone began to express their thoughts. Except for Yan Xiaoi and Guan Jing, who didn't have too many requirements, the others seemed to be hesitant. For example, Vol and Modi both hoped that they could have a flying messenger, but they were worried that the flying messenger would be weak. Among the flying messengers, the golden-winged eagle was obviously the first choice. However, they were somewhat unwilling to be the same as the members of the Zodiac squad. All kinds of problems kept popping up. After a full 2 hours of discussion, everyone reluctantly reached an agreement. After Qi Yu's mediation, the Zodiac warriors who didn't have an advantage in terms of movement speed chose the flying messenger. For example, Hu Guang, Yan Xiaoi, and Guan Jing chose the messenger with strong combat power. For those like Ian, who was agile but had relatively weak defense, they chose the messenger with strong defense. As for Ryue, Su Dong, and Ming Ming, who were more balanced, they could choose the messenger with strong defense. As for Hummer and Guan Ping, both of them had strong attack and defense. They chose the messenger that was good at long-range attack. As for the Plant Soul, Shang Bing, and Snow Girl, they each had their own choices. After a rough classification, under Qi Yu's orders, everyone began to move. The messenger had to be captured by themselves. Only in this way, the messenger would be convinced and become the giant beast's partner. Qi Yu taught everyone how to subdue the messengers. He also stipulated that the search area for the messenger was within 100 square kilometers. Other than Qi Yu, the 15 people were divided into 3 groups, with 5 people in each group. They went in 3 different directions to search for their messenger, and Qi Yu waited for them in the same place. If that group encountered a crisis that they couldn't resist, they would immediately send a signal, and he would rescue them as soon as possible. Of course, this was just in case of emergencies. The Zodiac Guardian Warriors' current strength was incomparable to the time when they competed with the 4 families on Tianxiang Mountain. In a group of 5, even experts like the Great Rock Wisdom King and the Deep Sea Hades Dragon King would need the help of their disciples and grand disciples if they wanted to win. With 5 people in a group, as long as it was the messenger they wanted, they could almost easily take it down. Among the 15 people, Vol was the only one who didn't need to look for the messenger anymore. Because Little Peng insisted on staying and refused to return to his tribe, and Vol was going to choose a messenger with the ability to fly, after Qi Yu discussed with Little Peng, he directly made him Vol's messenger. It should be noted that Little Peng had a cultivation of close to 20,000 years. Among the ancient beasts it was the strongest. Among the ancient giant beasts, He was second only to the Rock King. With his help, there was no doubt that Vol's strength had improved by leaps and bounds. This made the other Zodiac Guardian warriors very envious. However, Vol was the smallest among all the Zodiac Guardian warriors, so naturally no one would compete with him. Originally, Vol didn't need to look for the messenger, but for Modi, he still went. There were 3 groups in total, and they were easily divided. Chi Yu's 5 confidants were in a group. In this group, it could be said that they were the strongest. 2 Zodiac Guardian warriors, Ryue and Ming Ming, plus Snow Girl, whose strength had improved greatly, and the plant soul. Even Xiang Bing. Her advantage in speed was also incomparable to most of the Zodiac Guardian warriors. In a sense, she could completely become a Zodiac Leopard warrior, but because she didn't have the special abilities of the Zodiac Guardian warriors, she was slightly weaker in the same situation. However, Xiang Bing's current speed had reached a level that even surprised Chi Yu. Her wind attribute energy was the same as Chi Yu's wind thundercloud force. When she was cultivating, Chi Yu had assisted her several times, and now her attack power was also extremely strong. As for the other 2 groups, the 10 Zodiac Guardian warriors were directly arranged according to the order of the 12 earthly branches. Among all the Zodiac Guardian warriors, even the weakest one was close to the 7-cloud level, so they didn't need to worry at all. Chi Yu stayed on the mountain top alone, watching everyone leave. He summoned Bull Demon King again. Bull Demon King appeared beside Chi Yu, and said with some resentment, "Chi Yu, you little brat, it wasn't easy for me to build up the beast force, and you've almost destroyed it. Now you even want to capture my beasts to command. I really want to beat you up." Chi Yu smiled and said, "Don't give me that. Anyway, you can't go back to being the Beast King. Moreover, you have so many subordinates in the past, what's there to be afraid of?" Bull Demon King said unhappily, "You really are a little monster. You can even bestow Kirin with God's descent. I'm afraid only you, Ink Kirin of the 4 auspicious clouds, can achieve that. I really don't know what the heavens have planned. To think that a Kirin like you would appear." Chi Yu snorted and said, "Aren't you the same? Didn't the heavens also arrange for you, a super expert that surpasses the existence of divine beasts and beasts, to be on the side of the beasts? If I didn't appear, wouldn't the divine beasts be toyed to death by you? My appearance is specifically to restrain you." Bull Demon King was a little discouraged and said, "Fine, fine, fine, I'm afraid of you. Damn it, I don't know where that bastard Chi Yu ran off to. Let me catch him, see if I won't tear him apart alive." Chi Yu looked at Bull Demon King's fierce appearance, and couldn't help but find it funny and said, "You! That's enough. Chi Yu was able to survive for so long, how can he be so easy to deal with? If my guess is correct, you were probably partners in the past. If it wasn't because he obtained Panga's axe, you wouldn't bear to deal with him." Bull Demon King's face turned red and said, "Don't tell me you have the mind-reading ability? You even know this?" Chi Yu laughed and said, "I don't have the mind-reading ability, this is called reasoning. With your personality, you must have seen humans as the most useless creatures in your previous understanding. You can't be bothered to waste time on humans. Naturally, you would hand these over to the Jili people, who have a deep hatred for humans. If you say that you didn't cooperate with Chi Yu, I won't believe it even if you beat me to death. This is called birds of a feather flocking together, and beasts flocking together. Who are you calling a beast? Don't compare me with Chi Yu, that lowly creature." Bull Demon said angrily. Chi Yu shrugged his shoulders and said, "You must be angry from embarrassment. All right, it's useless to deny it. Anyway, you have already done what you should have done. Go back and rest. We will come again after 3 months. Even if Chi Yu went to search for the divine weapon, he should have come out after 3 months." Bull Demon nodded his head, and looked at Chi Yu with some admiration, and said, "You are a fellow who keeps his word. I admire this." Chi Yu laughed and said, "Bull Demon, you are wrong. I am a ruffian, and I don't want to keep my word. However, I am afraid that you will be driven to desperation. After all, the life and death domain does not restrict you alone. It's just that as my messenger, the restrictions on you are slightly greater." Bull Demon was stunned for a moment, and the way he looked at Chi Yu changed a little. He muttered, "Is this what you call the true vile person?" Then, he floated up and turned into a ray of light, and merged back into Chi Yu's body. Looking at the place where Bull Demon disappeared, Chi Yu revealed a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. He muttered to himself, "At least I am definitely not a hypocrite." The wait was longer than expected. The Zodiac Guardian God warriors actually took 3 whole days to capture the messenger. There was a reason why Chi Yu had chosen this place. During the flight earlier, he had used his mental strength to conduct a large-scale search of the surroundings. He was searching for the aura of the beast. The place he had chosen had the aura of many beasts, as well as the aura of neutral beast. What satisfied him the most was that the beasts and neutral beasts here were obviously not from the 3 main camps of beasts. This meant that Chi Yu did not need to worry about the 3 main camps of beasts taking revenge on the humans. In the span of 3 days, the forest within a radius of 100 miles had been turned upside down. The Zodiac Guardian God warriors were divided into 3 groups. Their method was very simple. As long as they saw a slightly stronger beast, they would immediately attack with all their strength and subdue it first. Then, they would discuss among themselves and see who wanted this beast as their messenger. If no one wanted it, they would knock the beast unconscious and throw it away. If someone wanted it, they would then negotiate with the beast. Perhaps they had inherited Chi Yu's ruffian tradition. There were many unique aspects to their method. For example, after Hu Guang caught the messenger that he fancied, in order to make the other party sincerely submit to him, he used a feather and rubbed it on the nose of the pitiful ancient beast for more than half an hour. He only stopped after confirming that the beast was truly willing to follow him. It caused the beast to sneeze for an entire month. Even in the dangerous ancient giant beast era, the strength of the Zodiac Guardian God warriors was tyrannical. Chi Yu's mental strength had been following their movements, but the scattered ancient giant beasts in this area could not pose any threat to the Zodiac Guardian God warriors. Naturally, Chi Yu could only wait leisurely. 3 days later, everyone returned to Chi Yu's side. Through Chi Yu's inspection, he found that the beasts caught by the Zodiac Guardian God warriors were of good quality. To his surprise, the women caught neutral beasts instead of vicious beasts. This was beyond Chi Yu's expectation. One had to know that although there were powerful neutral beasts, there were far fewer of them compared to the ferocious beast. Of course, the women's reason was also very simple. Neutral beasts were gentler, and they looked much more beautiful than vicious beasts. That was why they made this choice. They had already made their choice. There was nothing Chi Yu could do. He just used the energy of the origin of nature to help the Zodiac Guardian God warriors baptize their newly obtained earth tokens. Only then did he stop. The ancient giant beasts obtained by the 12 Zodiac Guardian God warriors and the 3 women were Vole, golden-winged giant eagle, Little Pung. The 20,000-year-old super golden-winged giant eagle was close to the level of transforming into a human. As for Mo Dan, perhaps because she still had some thoughts about Vole, her master was a big mouse called Golden Tortoise. As a neutral giant beast, Golden Tortoise's body was only the size of an ordinary cat, but its speed on land could be said to be the fastest among all the ancient giant beasts. As long as it moved, it could definitely be described as coming and going like lightning. Its own impact was also very strong, which just happened to make up for Mo Dan's lack of speed. Su Dong didn't know what he was thinking. Among the Zodiac Guardian God warriors, he was the only one who chose a similar animal as him. In other words, he chose a tiger as his master. And it was a female tiger. This was a black crystal tiger. Its whole body was black, and it was about 7 meters long. It was much bigger than a modern tiger. There were dark red lines on its black body, especially the word king on its forehead, which was actually blood red. In the beginning, when Su Dong chose this black crystal tiger, it was only because it was beautiful, and it gave him a very close feeling at first sight. And this black crystal tiger didn't resist too much and chose Su Dong. Later, after Little Peng's guidance, Su Dong found out that this black crystal tiger was much stronger than he imagined. In the beast world, it was also a famous high-rank beast. Even a special beast like Hun Dun did not dare to act wildly in front of this black crystal tiger. And this black crystal tiger that Su Dong chose had been cultivating for nearly 20,000 years. It had cultivated for close to 20,000 years, and its strength was not inferior to Little Peng's. It could be said that it was the best ancient giant beast chosen by the Zodiac guardian god warriors. Its land attack power, not long after, shocked everyone. Modi's master was a bit ridiculous. It was a charmingly naive giant bear. With Modi's gentle personality, it was really hard to imagine that she actually chose a neutral giant beast, Diamond Bear. However, the Diamond Bear was chosen by Little Peng for Modi. Vol had Little Peng as his master. For Modi, it was equivalent to having a flying mount. And Modi's main ability was to attack as fast as lightning. In terms of attack speed, she was definitely the best among the Zodiac guardian god warriors. Because of this, her defense was relatively weak. Otherwise, Vol would not be able to use its body to save Modi several times, gradually winning her heart. Among the ancient giant beasts, the Diamond Bear was not famous, because it was too gentle, lazy, and rarely took the initiative to attack. As a bear, it only ate fruits and honey and refused to eat meat, which showed how good its temper was. It could be said that the Diamond Bear's attack power was almost negligible. However, the Diamond Bear was the easiest race to survive in the entire ancient giant beast era. The reason was very simple. Although their attack power was very weak, the Diamond Bear's defense was second to none, even compared to the Black Tortoise, which was known for its defense. After all, because of its laziness, it put all its energy on defense. And this time, the Diamond Bear that Modi obtained had already cultivated for tens of thousands of years. To Modi, it was definitely the best meat shield. As a Zodiac dragon warrior, Ryue's tyrannical strength was well-rounded. It could be said that it was difficult to find any flaws in Ryue. So, when choosing the master, under the guidance of Chi Yu's mental strength, she also obtained a balanced and well-rounded neutral giant beast, the Golden Lion. A super-neutral giant beast that had cultivated for 20,000 years, and was only one step away from entering the realm of human form. The reason why Chi Yu chose this forest was because there were a few strong auras in this forest that attracted him. Su Dong's black crystal tiger was one, and Ryue's golden lion was another. These two giant beasts were the kings of different areas in the forest. To Chi Yu's amusement, the golden lion was a female, just like the black crystal tiger. Hu Guang's messenger was an insect. That's right, it was a slightly ridiculous insect. Emperor Black Mamba chose the Emperor Slime. Speaking of which, they were fated. The slime was not considered an ancient giant beast, but the size of this slime was too big. However, the size of this slime was too big. No matter how one looked at it, it could definitely compete with the ancient behemoth. At least on the surface, it was more than 3 meters long. Its constantly squirming body was transparent like a crystal, and it was shining with colorful light. In terms of age, perhaps all the ancient giant beasts here could not compare to it. According to Little Peng, this colorful slime was at least millions of years old since it was so huge. It was simply a living fossil. The slime was one of the most ancient species, and it had no offensive power. However, after coming into contact with this giant slime, Hu Guang chose it without hesitation. First of all, with Hu Guang's current strength, physical attacks did not have much effect on him at all, only energy attacks. In other words, only a range of energy attacks could cause harm to him. The greatest ability of this colorful slime was that it could carry out attachment and merge with Hu Guang's body. Its defense against energy was almost immune to all known energy attribute. Unless the strength of the energy reached an incredible level, or there was a super artifact like the Xianyuan sword, it was almost impossible to break through its defense. With this bug, it could be said that Hu Guang was already in an invincible position. At the same time, one of the abilities of the colorful slime that Hu Guang was most satisfied with was that the energy of the colorful slime could condense the toxins emitted by Hu Guang himself. Although the attack range was reduced, the toxicity strength was directly increased to more than 3 times the original, greatly increasing Hu Guang's attack power. Changjia, the super dire beast, the violent 3-eyed demonic ape, was good at strong attacks and long-range attacks. The violent 3-eyed demonic ape, which was more than 15 meters tall, had strength that even the giant dragon had to give way to. The third eye on its forehead could easily attack any creature within 100 meters. The destructive and penetrating power of its metal attribute was extremely amazing. Yan Xiaoi, the powerful one-eyed giant. The one-eyed giant's one-eyed demonic ape had the same effect as the violent 3-eyed demonic ape. They were both long-range attack weapons, but its long-range attack was of a psychedelic nature. As long as one was covered by its one-eyed giant, and the opponent did not have a strong mental strength, the spirit would immediately collapse and be at the mercy of others. The one-eyed giant was nearly 25 meters tall. It was the largest among the dire beasts. Its incomparably strong body gave it a stronger melee attack and defense ability. It was the most suitable for a guy like Yan Xiaoi who was good at medicine. Ian, the king of the forest with excellent attack and defense, was an extremely strong King Kong gorilla. Although it was only about 10 meters tall, it was strong enough to compete with the one-eyed giant. Moreover, it was even more domineering than the one-eyed giant. It was a rare super expert in melee combat. Moreover, its agility was completely compatible with Ian. A pair of 2-meter-long claws had a terrifying tearing ability. Ming Ming, the plant-type dire beast, the ancient tree, whose main ability was defense. Ming Ming had already reached the 8 clouds. When she reached the highest 9 clouds, she would become a powerful phoenix, which was also the vermilion bird of the traditional 4 sacred beasts. The ancient tree's ability just happened to complement her. The special plant-type attribute greatly improved Ming Ming's defense and support ability. The ancient tree's defensive range could reach a terrifying 100 square meters. Although it was not a phoenix tree, it was Ming Ming's most suitable partner as a giant beast. Guan Ping, a super ferocious beast, Jiu Ying, who specialized in long-range attack. If one were to say who had the strongest long-range attack power among the group, it would be this Jiu Ying, who had cultivated for more than 10,000 years. When Guan Ping's group had first subdued it, they had expended a lot of effort. The 9-headed dragon looked like a 9-headed snake, which was somewhat similar to the deep-sea nether snake before it evolved into the nether dragon, but it was slightly smaller. Nevertheless, its 9 heads were different from the deep-sea nether snake, which would only grow 1 head after it became stronger. It was born with 9 heads, which could launch energy attacks of 9 different attributes. Its long-range attack ability was extremely powerful. The 9 attack energies were metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, light, and darkness. It was definitely a super dire beast with balanced energy attribute. It was just that it did not have a high status among the dire beasts due to its low numbers and weak physical attack and defense. Guanjing, an ancient stegosaurus that was good at all-around attack. It was a variant of the stegosaurus from the dinosaur era. It was rare, but its attack was extremely powerful, which was a perfect match for the black tortoise pig's strong defense. Shangbing, a neutral giant beast, shadow leopard. When the shadow leopard's speed was fully unleashed, it could almost turn invisible. It complemented Shangbing's own ability, which made her already terrifying speed even more terrifying. Snow Girl, an amphibious dark ice beast, a neutral giant beast with special and powerful attribute. It was only completely subdued with the help of Kunlun mirrors. Similar to Shangbing, it had a great effect on her own ability. Since she, Snow Girl, and the plant soul did not have super powerful talents like the Zodiac warriors, they chose ancient giant beasts that could enhance their abilities. Plant soul, an overlord man-eating flower that was supported by death devouring. It was huge, and its attack was extremely powerful. It also had corrosive attacks. After weighing the pros and cons, the plant soul chose it over the ancient giant tree. Her ability and the man-eating flower could be said to complement each other, and they had a great effect on each other. It was also the easiest for everyone to subdue the messengers. The intimacy of the man-eating flower towards her did not show its ferocious nature at all. This had a lot to do with the fact that the plant soul was filled with the aura of the source of nature that Chi-Yu had given to her. With these messengers, everyone's abilities had been greatly improved. However, if they wanted to communicate with their messengers and gain their true recognition, it would still take a long time. After all, in the eyes of those ancient giant beasts, they were just humans. Although they had the inexplicable god of Kirin's descent, these ancient giant beasts would definitely not see them as Kirin. Naturally, they were even more unwilling to become their giant beast partner. As for the 5-year promise that Chi-Yu had taught them, only a few girls told their messengers about it. As for guys like Yan Xiaoi and Hu Guang, they had finally gotten their messengers, so they were unwilling to give it up after 5 years. Of course, when their abilities reached the 9-cloud level, they would gradually give up on this idea. After all, as a strong person, their own abilities were the most important. The light of the Kunlun mirror once again appeared in the headquarters of the Tu clan in the ancient beast era. Including Xiao Lu, a group of 17 people quietly left this pure and unadorned era, returning to the noisy city while being shrouded in a green light. Chapter 309. The light gradually dimmed, and the people quietly appeared in the courtyard of the Dragon Field courtyard in a ring formation. Snow Girl was in the center of the formation. Her strength had improved rapidly, and with the help of Chi-Yu, it was much easier to control the Kunlun mirrors than before. There would no longer be any strong energy fluctuations, which made people suspicious. Yan Xiaoi stretched his body and laughed. I'm back. Although the environment here isn't that great, the feeling of going home is really good. Ryu glared at him and said, Are you saying that the environment of the Dragon Field courtyard is not good? Yan Xiaoi was shocked and quickly smiled apologetically. No, Sister Ryue, don't misunderstand, I was just saying. He dared to offend others, but he did not dare to offend Ryue. Even without Chi-Yu, he could not afford to offend Ryun's powerful strength. Chi-Yu shook his head helplessly and said, All right, everyone has worked hard these few days. Everyone has worked hard these past few days. Go back and rest. Looking up at the sun in the sky, it was already afternoon in the capital of the Yan Huang Republic. There was still quite some time before dinner. As time passed, the Zodiac Guardian God warriors had become stronger under the leadership of Chi-Yu, gradually approaching the peak state they could reach. The most powerful Zodiac warrior in history. What would they face in the near future? Perhaps only the heavens would know. The Vatican. Pope Marty sat on his throne. His wise eyes looked a little dim. He seemed to be thinking about something. Below him, the 4 red-robed archbishops stood quietly on both sides, while the high-ranking clergymen representing the various churches, as well as the high-ranking members of the Vatican's Court of Inquiry, were gathered in the main church of Vatican, quietly waiting for the Pope's instructions. A few days ago, Marty had received the news that Chi-Yu had returned to the Yanhuang Republic. He regarded Chi-Yu as the greatest threat to the Vatican in the adept world. However, for some unknown reason, Malty wasn't disappointed at all when Chi-Yu returned. Instead, he was filled with joy. He could never forget how Chi-Yu had stepped forward at the last moment and completely changed the path of the asteroid. He knew that in his life, he would never be able to defeat Chi-Yu. He would never be able to reach the level of that Asian man. The Vatican Cathedral was filled with a holy aura. A huge cross hung on the wall behind Marty. A faint milky white light seeped out from it. The holy aura kept everyone calm. Everyone, Marty finally spoke. The clergyman hurriedly bowed and waited for his instructions. He slowly stood up from his seat. Dressed in the Pope's unique attire, Marty's entire body seemed to be filled with an unconcealable sense of holiness. He tapped the long-handled scepter lightly on the ground. The worry in his eyes could not be concealed. Not long ago, I received instructions from God. In the near future, I'm afraid we will face an unavoidable holy war. As the representative of the Emperor of Heaven in the human world, this holy war is the biggest test for the Vatican. Now we must start preparing. Cardinal Paolo Gasol stepped forward and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, what are the instructions of the Emperor of Heaven?" In the Vatican, he was the chief cardinal, and his authority was second only to Marty. If Marty passed away, then he would be the first in line for the position of Pope. Marty sighed and said, "The Emperor of Heaven only had one instruction. The demons are about to descend on the human world. We must form the Holy Cross Army to face the demons' invasion. The demons will bring the most powerful evil force to the human world. Even if we have to pay with our lives, we must stop them from advancing." Hearing the Pope's words, the expressions of the clergymen turned solemn. To be able to sit in their current positions, they were the most loyal followers of the Emperor of Heaven. This was the first time they had heard of such an instruction, and it was from Pope Marty's mouth. Paolo Gasol hesitated for a moment and said, "Your Majesty, if we reorganize the Holy Cross Army, I'm afraid we will be opposed by all sectors of society. It will be detrimental to the Vatican's development in the future." A long time ago, the Vatican had given up on all military forces and only specialized clergymen. In today's society, no country could allow the Church to pose a threat to the country's institutions, not even the Vatican that had existed for thousands of years. Therefore, the Holy Cross Army of the Vatican no longer existed. Now that the Pope suddenly suggested reorganizing the Holy Cross Army, the clergymen were shocked. Marty sighed and said, "We can't care too much now. The demons are about to come to the human world. As the most loyal followers of the Emperor of Heaven, we must use the power of our faith to eliminate all obstacles and prepare for war. As for the problems of the various countries, I will try my best to solve them through political means. However, the Holy Cross Army must be reorganized in the shortest time possible. Paolo, the 4 of you cardinals will immediately go with the Inquisition to handle this matter after you leave here. As long as the clergymen have reached the level of a knight, they will gather and undergo unified training. I will bestow the blessing of the Emperor of Heaven on them. The divine protectors will support us in our fight against the demons in the name of the Emperor of Heaven." The Pope's authority was supreme in the Vatican. Even the cardinals had no right to oppose the Pope's decision. Amidst the turbulent undercurrents, the Vatican had begun to move. For the near future, the Vatican began to mobilize the forces that they had accumulated over the years. As the Pope, Marty issued the Pope's decree. Under the suspicion of many countries, he began to communicate closely with the Western countries. For the Zodiac guardian god warriors, peace was the rarest thing they had. A whole week had passed. Nothing bothered them. For the first time in a year. This was the first time Chi-Yu had such a leisurely day. Every day, apart from assisting everyone in their cultivation, he would spend time with his female friends, go home to see his parents, and live a relaxed and carefree life. This was a feeling that Chi-Yu had not experienced in a long, long time. For a whole week, he let go of all the burdens in his heart and let his body and mind completely relax. They lived a peaceful and happy life. "Chi-Yu, what can we do to break through the bottleneck?" There were only 4 people in the main hall of the Dragonfield courtyard. Chi-Yu, Ming-Ming, Su-Dong, and Hai-Ryue. Within a week, Chi-Yu helped Ming-Ming and Su-Dong, who had also reached the 8-cloud level, to reach the pinnacle of the 8-cloud level. However, they also encountered the same problem as Ryue, which was reaching the final bottleneck. This wasn't something that could be broken through with the help of the source of nature. At least Chi-Yu had helped them test it several times. But there were still no result. Shaking his head helplessly, Chi-Yu lazily reclined on the sofa. If you want to make the final breakthrough, I'm afraid you can only rely on your own strength. External forces can't help you break through. If it wasn't for the miraculous source of nature, you wouldn't have reached the pinnacle of the 8-cloud level so quickly. Actually, we should be satisfied. If we can raise everyone's strength to the 8-cloud level in a short period of time, it will definitely be a huge leap for us. For us, it will definitely be another leap in our overall strength. Ming Ming giggled. If I knew it was so easy, I wouldn't have trained so hard. In the past, I wouldn't have trained so hard. With your help, wouldn't I be able to reach this level in a short period of time? Chi-Yu sternly said, No, Ming Ming, you're wrong. Although the source of nature can increase your strength quickly, only the energy obtained from your own training is the most solid. Although your energy has increased now, because you haven't experienced the difficulties of training, your use of energy is still far from enough. What you need to do now is still to train hard and adapt to your current energy situation as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll never be able to break through the bottleneck. If it wasn't for the threat of the Hell-Burning Legion, I definitely wouldn't spoil things through excessive enthusiasm and let you guys improve in a short period of time. Right now, I just hope there won't be any side effects. Ming Ming stuck out her tongue, glanced at Chi-Yu and said, You only know how to talk about us. You've been quite idle recently. Apart from assisting everyone in training every night, you've been wandering around during the day, making my eyes blur. Chi-Yu laughed. You're just jealous. It's rare for me to be able to relax during this period of time. Shouldn't I properly relax? Only God knew when Satan would bring the Burning Legion to Earth. When that time comes, we'll be busy again. Ryue said, Chi-Yu, have you thought of a countermeasure? If it's as you said, once the Burning Legion appears, then they will descend on the Western world. When that time comes, what should we do? Chi-Yu said, I already have a plan. Overall, from the perspective of the plane, the one fighting against Satan's Burning Legion should be the so-called Celestial Emperor's world, which was also the plane that the Vatican believed in. Therefore, once the Burning Legion appeared, the Vatican in the West would definitely become the main force to snipe them. Although I don't know how strong the Vatican is, it's almost impossible for them to fight against the Burning Legion with their strength alone. After all, the Church only represented the plane of the Celestial Emperor, while the infernal realm had turned out in full force. No one in the Church could stop a super powerhouse like Satan. When that time comes, the Vatican will definitely suffer great losses, and it's hard to say how long they can resist. Ming Ming interrupted, As long as hell appears, do we go to help the Vatican? Chi-Yu shook his head and said, No, after the Burning Legion appears, we can't act immediately. Master Zagru once said that the ordeal that Earth is about to face will come one after another. The first disaster is obviously the appearance of the asteroid, and the second should be hell. According to the current situation on Earth, people with abilities like us are mainly divided into 3 groups. The Vatican is fighting against hell, and the Greek Guardians are very likely to fight against the underworld army led by Hades, the traitor of the Greek gods. These 2 forces are extremely powerful and can pose a huge threat to the Western world. However, we, the Guardians of the East, are also a powerful force in this world, and can even be said to be the strongest. Even the Greek Guardians and the Vatican will face the challenge of the evil plane. What about us? Will we also encounter the attack of the evil plane? From the perspective of the true legend of Yen Huang, this situation should not happen. After all, before the 2 great gods of water and fire broke the void and left, they had already imprisoned or destroyed all the gods of the East. However, I always have a feeling of unease. The East should not be peaceful. Otherwise, it would not make sense for me, the Ink Kirin of the 4 auspicious clouds, to be born in the East. Therefore, after the war with the Vatican, we can't be too hasty. After all, the Vatican has a very deep foundation, and the same is true for the Greek guardians. They also have the support of the governments of the Western countries. When the evil plane threatens the safety of the countries, they will definitely resist with all their strength. Even if hell and the underworld come, it will not be easy to completely occupy the East. Therefore, we must wait and see if there will be any special situations or powerful enemies in the East. After confirming that the East is safe, we can rush to the West to assist the Vatican. After listening to Chi-Yu's analysis, Ryue and the other two nodded at the same time. Su-dong asked, "Boss, who do we help when the time comes? Will we help the Greek guardians or the Vatican?" Chi-Yu glanced at Su-dong, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Although I shouldn't involve the feelings of others in the face of a serious situation, the hatred between me and the successor of the goddess Athena is too deep. It is a hatred that cannot be reconciled. Therefore, when the time comes, if we choose to help someone, it will definitely be the Vatican. As long as the enemies of the Vatican are defeated by us, they will also assist the Greek guardians. We don't need to worry about anything else. The matter of the asteroid was too urgent and threatened the safety of the entire Earth, so we had to temporarily cooperate with the Greek guardians. But that was the first time, and it will also be the last time. In the future, the same thing will never happen again. Although Chi-Yu's eyes were very calm, Su-dong still felt a trace of coldness. All the Zodiac Guardian warriors knew that Yamu had deceived Chi-Yu's feelings. At the same time, she had also caused the death of Wen-ting and Snow Girl's father. This hatred could never be made up for. Now, it was already very difficult for Chi-Yu to suppress his desire for revenge and not settle the score with Yamu and continue the battle from last time. Ryue squeezed Chi-Yu's hand and sighed softly. The matter between us and the Greek guardians will be resolved sooner or later. Chi-Yu, you don't need to think too much. As the saying goes, there will always be a way. When the crisis on Earth is resolved, we will definitely avenge Wen-ting. Also, there will be Snow Girl's father and Prince Klinsman. Chi-Yu nodded lightly. Just as he was about to say something, his expression suddenly changed. Two seemingly solid eyes shot out from his eyes and looked in the direction of the villa's door. A graceful figure had appeared outside the villa's door. Even with the strength of Ryue, Su-dong, and Ming-Ming, they actually did not notice her arrival. When the three of them followed Chi-Yu's gaze and saw the figure, they could not help but exclaim in their hearts at the same time. It's her. Speak of the devil. It was none other than the strongest of the Greek guardians, the successor of the goddess of war and wisdom, Athena, Yamu. Yamu came alone. At least, Chi-Yu did not feel the aura of the Zodiac guardians. She just stood outside the door and looked at Chi-Yu quietly. Her beautiful eyes were very calm, so calm that it was a little hard to imagine. She wore a long white dress which outlined her perfect figure. Her long purple hair hung quietly behind her back, and Yamu's face looked a little pale. However, the holy aura on her body seemed to be more abundant than the last time they fought at Mount Everest. Clearly, it was a sign that her strength had improved. Chi-Yu's laziness disappeared, and he slowly stood up. His black trousers and Yamu's white dress formed a sharp contrast. His gaze, like two cold bolts of lightning, he stared at Yamu and said in a low voice, "What are you doing here?" Yamu had been looking at Chi-Yu. From the moment she appeared, her calm gaze had been fixed on Chi-Yu, as though she wanted to see through him. She did not answer Chi-Yu's question, and only said lightly, "Why? Aren't you going to invite me in?" Chi-Yu slowly walked towards the door and said coldly, "There's no need. We don't welcome enemies here. The hospitality of the Yan Huang people will not be used on our enemies." As he spoke, he looked at Yan Huang. As he spoke, he had already walked to the door of the villa, looking down at Yamu at the bottom of the step. Chi-Yu's expression was not as calm as Yamu's. Every time he saw her, The scene of him almost dying from Yamu's frenzied absorption of the source of nature's energy would appear before his eyes. Such a destructive deception was something that Chiyu would never forget for the rest of his life. Looking at Chiyu, Yamu's gaze was still calm, and she nodded slightly. "All right. Since you won't invite me in, then forget it. After all, we've long been enemies." Chiyu said coldly, "You haven't answered my question. What are you doing here? If you want to seek cooperation again, then please keep your mouth shut. Our Zodiac Guardian warriors will not cooperate with the despicable Greek. You should know what happened at the asteroid. I did it for the safety of Earth, for the safety of Yen Huang. That was why I had no choice but to cooperate with you temporarily. Now that the cooperation is over, there is only hatred between us." Yamu revealed a faint bitter smile. "You don't have to emphasize it too much. Don't tell me I still don't understand? Everything that has happened can never be undone. Ever since I saw your expression at the top of Mount Everest, I deeply understood this truth. Don't worry, I'm not here to seek cooperation today. I know that there is no possibility of cooperation between us. Even if we, the Greek Guardians, are about to face an irresistible enemy and are destined to be destroyed, we will not ask for cooperation with you. We have our own dignity too." Hearing her words, Chi-Yu's expression softened a little. He said indifferently, "Then you can tell me your purpose. I don't think you would come to the Yenhuang Republic for no reason. Seeing that Earth is about to face many disasters, I cannot kill you now and postpone our battle. When the other problems are resolved, our battle will still be unavoidable." Yamu suddenly smiled. With her perfect appearance, her smile was as dazzling as 10,000 flowers blooming. However, in that moving smile, there was endless sorrow and despair. Just as she had said, she had long given up on Chiyu. Sometimes, as long as one made a mistake in life, it would be irreversible. Yamu understood this deeply. "No, Chiyu." Yumao gently combed her long hair, which was slightly messed up by the wind, and said indifferently, "I have only one purpose for coming here this time, and that is to settle the matter between us before the Earth faces a calamity. If I die, I will no longer have to work for the Greek Guardians and Earth. If you were to die, I would be able to devote all my energy to fighting against the upcoming calamity. Why don't we resolve the problem between us before the disaster comes? Otherwise, who can say if we will be able to continue living in this world when the calamity comes?" Chiyu looked at Yamu in surprise. He did not expect Yamu to say such a thing. She took the initiative to challenge him. This made Chiyu look at her more and more doubtful. Of course, he knew how much pressure Hope was facing now. Just the fact that hell could come at any time would probably make Pope Marty and Athena's inheritor, Yamu, very busy. Under such circumstances, she had actually come to the Yen Huang Republic to find him, and to fight with him. It had to be said that this was a very strange thing. "You want to fight me?" Chiyu looked at Yamu and frowned. Yamu looked up at Chiyu and said in a provocative tone, "Why? Don't you dare?" Chiyu snorted disdainfully. "If it wasn't for the impending calamity, I wouldn't even be here. The West still needs your strength. When I return from the asteroid, the first thing I will look for is you. Do you think that I will feel afraid when I face you? Blood debt. It must be repaid with blood." Yamu said coldly, "Very well, then let the battle decide our fate. Just you and me, do you dare? Of course, if you want to kill me by any means necessary, you can ask your companions to do it." Chiyu shook his head. "In your heart, am I that kind of person? The enmity between us naturally has to be settled by ourselves. Very well, since you have come to me, there is no need for us to say anything more. However, before the battle, I want to know why you chose to come at this time. There is no need to say those high-sounding reasons. With your personality, if there is no special purpose, you will not do so. After all, you have always been very rational. After all, haven't you always been very rational?" Yamu did not seem to understand Chiyu's sarcasm, and said indifferently, "Do you want to hear the reason? Very well, I will tell you. The reason is very simple, because the Xianyuan sword has been broken. If I do not take advantage of this time to kill you, after you get back the Xianyuan sword, I am not sure that I can defeat you. Ha 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 ha! Chiyu laughed loudly. His laughter was filled with a cold aura. Good. Good good. Yamu, it seems that you want me to see you as even more despicable. Do you think that without the Xianyuan sword, I can't fight against you? Come, let the hatred between us be settled today. Chiyu was very calm. Although he hated Yamu, but, with his understanding of Yamu, he naturally knew that the reason that Yamu just said was not credible. It was obvious that she was hiding something. However, Chiyu had absolute confidence in his own strength. Even without the Xianyuan sword, he did not believe that Yamu could do anything when he was fully alert. The beautiful figure of Wenting, the helplessness of the Emperor's Heart Snow Lotus King before its death, Klinsmann's reluctance in despair, kept flashing in front of his eyes. And Yamu's determination to choose to absorb his origin of nature energy, all of which tore and eroded his heart. Chiyu. Ryue's voice came from behind. Turning around, Chiyu saw Ryue, Ming, and Su Dong looking at him with concern. He smiled confidently and said gently, "Why, you still don't believe in my strength? Wait for me, soon I will be back. Return with victory. Miss Yamu, please." Yamu looked deeply at Chiyu, floated up, and flew up into the sky covered by a white light. Her energy had indeed improved again. She just subconsciously released her protective energy and easily covered up the aura emitted from her body. Even the best radar could not detect her figure at this time, not even thermal radars. Chiyu also floated up and followed behind Yamu. Ming and Ryue did not say anything. They knew that this was the biggest knot in Chiyu's heart, and only he could solve it himself. When a man did what he had to do as his lover, they could only silently support and pray. They could not stop him. In just a flash, Chiyu had already caught up to Yamu, and his faint voice reached Yamu's ears. "Miss Yamu, where should we fight it out?" Yamu did not look at Chiyu, her eyes were fixed in front of her. "The capital of the Yenwang Republic is very close to the sea. To avoid unnecessary trouble, let's fight it out on the open sea. At least we won't be disturbed there." "Okay." Chiyu's reply was only one word. The two of them sped up almost at the same time, turning into two rays of light and flying towards the sea. Looking at Chiyu and Yamu's disappearing silhouettes, Ming held Ryue's hand worriedly and said, "Sister Ryue, can Chiyu defeat her?" Ryue nodded confidently and said, "He definitely can. Although he has lost the advantage of the Xianyuan sword, Chiyu's strength has increased to an unprecedented level. His overall strength has increased, and he is even stronger than when he had the Xianyuan sword. Chiyu knows what to do. In his heart, we are still there. I believe that he will come back safely." Ming clasped her hands in front of her chest, silently praying for her lover. At this moment, she could not help but regret saying that Chiyu was lazy. It would be great if he could continue to be lazy like that. At least, he would not be in any danger that way. Chiyu and Yamu's flying speed was extremely shocking. Back when they were in space, they could even keep up with the speed of asteroids for a period of time, let alone flying on Earth. In half an hour, they had left the mainland far behind and arrived in the sky above the vast and boundless sea. The open sea was not controlled by any country. This was probably the quietest place on Earth. The weather was good that day. The sun was shining brightly, shining on the dark blue sea. Those who were familiar with the sea knew that the darker the color of the sea, the deeper it was. The sea where Chiyu and Yamu were now was undoubtedly the deep sea. "Let's do it here." Chiyu stopped flying forward. Yamu continued to rush forward for 100 meters before stopping. She turned around and looked at the man who had the greatest influence on her life. For a moment, she could not help but look a little dazed. The seawater constantly rippled, reflecting the dazzling light. On the surface of the slowly rippling sea, a man and a woman, one black and one white, stared at each other from a distance. The two of them stared at each other blankly for a full minute. Neither of them spoke. It was Chi-Yu who reacted first. He closed his eyes and swept Yamu's alluring face from his mind. He said calmly, "Miss Yamu, can we start now? The problems between us should come to an end today." Yamu snapped out of her daze. She looked at him calmly and coldly and said in a low voice, "That's right. I won't be merciful. I hope that you will be the same." Chi-Yu snorted coldly. "Merciful? I've never thought about that. Ever since I left London, Yamu's name has always been my enemy.